And so on day one, we primarily covered some fundamental concept of cloud computing. And then on AWS specific thing, we understood the AWS ecosystem and we covered the compute services. And though we talked about multiple compute services available in the AWS, but we primarily focused on EC2 because that is the most used service to whenever you need to create any servers. EC2 is the service which you will be using. And then we also covered load balancer concept and we saw it in action, that exactly how it works. So again, I request all of you that please complete these exercises because these are the very basics. These are the very basic fundamentals that you should definitely be knowing if you are appearing in any of the exams of AWS certifications, or if you in future if you want to call out that yes, I have AWS knowledge, then these are basically the fundamentals you should definitely be knowing. So I recommend that please do these hands on so you can get that confidence.
Also, it is very important to do hands-on for the exam perspective, because when you do the hands-on, you'll notice the various flags which are there when you create virtual machine, when you create other stuff. And there are many tips as well when you create the instances. When you click on select the instance family, then you get more description about instance family, different things, and these things will actually help you in answering the questions in the exam, because sometime you will get a tricky question. So these are the things that will help you, like the hands-on things that you have tried.
Yeah. So today we are going to focus on various storage services available in AWS, and if time permits, we will try to cover a few more concepts as well. So Rajat, would you like to talk about these or?
Yeah, sure. So, as we discussed earlier, it is on-demand services of IT resources over cloud, over internet. That is the definition, the basic definition of cloud, and with the pay-as-you-go model. So, those were the two major attributes in the cloud computing, and it's even based on the three pillars of cloud computing. So, the very first pillar is compute, which includes all your CPU RAM combination, and the second one is a storage where we actually store the data, and the third one is a networking. So all the cloud services are actually majorly categorized based on these three pillars. So as Dipali shown in the first demo, under the compute service there were multiple type of compute services. We have EC2, we can run containers using ECS, we can run Kubernetes clusters using EKS, we have Lightsail as well to deploy web portals and web applications. We have serverless compute as well, which is like Lambda function, for which we don't have to create or procure any server, but these services also falls under the compute category. And the second is the storage category. So when we talk about storage, the basic thing that comes to our mind is the hard drive. So it starts from that point, like how much the default storage we will allocate to our operating system, how we can add additional drives, which is D drive into our system to increasing the storage space. And then there comes the concept of a shared storages. So if you're working on a team and you need a common storage space which will be shared with the different teams, so there are different categories of storage, which is block storage, uh, the the EFS file system. Then we have object storage, which is S3. So these are the various services that will cover in the storage pillar. And the third part is a network pillar. So the next session is focused on the network pillar, like how to start with the networking concepts, what are the different areas for the security. So network also falls with the security thing. We start touching on the security by the end of the session today. But network is majorly focusing on like how you can create a private VLAN for you, a private cloud onto AWS for you, how you can set up a secure communication between your on-premise application and cloud, and these are all the things which comes under these pillars. So whenever you design any application, these are the three pillars that you need to consider in terms of completeness of the application, as well as the security and the cost optimization as well. Okay, we can move next. So let's talk about the EBS, which is Elastic Block Store. So this is the default storage service provided by Amazon. So if you remember, like we created our first virtual machine and we allocated a default disk space of 8 GB, so that we can get a root volume or a root drive for our host. So when we created that Linux box, we attach specific CPU RAM, and by default in the configuration we also attach one default elastic block store. So can anyone tell us like what are the different type of things we want to perform on system? Something like what is the purpose of root volume, what is the purpose of additional devices like D drive, E drive? Any example?
Uh, we want to install the operating system and application configuration.
Yes, yes, perfectly said, Rupesh. So the very important feature is like we want to install. So install is the word, like this EBS is the place where you can install stuff. You can install your operating system, and you can also install the third party application like Java, .NET, or any other thing you can install, because the other type of storages that we'll talk about going forward, they will just be kind of a passive storage where you can keep the data, you can read and write the data, but you cannot execute stuff there. For executing your stuff, EBS is a must thing to have. And as we discussed, like if you shut down the machine, if you shut down your virtual machine, then you will get a very less billing. So you will get a less billing because CPU and RAM is stopped, but you still have to pay for the storage. So where that storage is actually captured, that storage is a part of Elastic Block Store, and it captures the space. So say like one more thing is very important. Like you don't have to pay the upfront cost. So if you have used like 1 terabyte of C drive and EBS block storage while creating a virtual machine, so you don't have to pay the cost for the 1 terabyte space right away. You will only have to pay the cost for the space that you start utilizing. Like you created a volume of 1 terabyte, but you're using only 100 GB. So you'll only have to pay the cost for the 100 GB. But you can expand up to 1 terabyte for the same Elastic Block Store. So Dipali, do you have any virtual machine running in your environment? If we can show that console so that people can relate.
I'm not very sure. I might have deleted
Deleted that one.
all the
Okay.
machines, but yeah, I think for today we are not planning, but we can quickly create spin up one machine and can showcase.
Rajat, I have a question. Can I quickly ask that, or
Yeah,
should I
Jatin.
paste the question in the chat?
Yeah, Jatin, go ahead.
Just actually, when we are talking about the storage on the EC2, so basically, like we have two kind of options: instant store and EBS. Okay,
Right.
and right now, when we are talking about like the cost associated with the EBS volume, so that is also dependent on us. If we are just using that behavior of delete on termination, if we are just making use of that option, then we will be able to preserve the volume which is present with us. Okay, but if
Right.
we are
Right.
not just using that option of delete on termination, in that case our volume will be deleted, like when our EC2 instance will be terminated. So in that case, I think there will be no charges. Like, is my understanding correct?
So again, Jatin, there are two ways. Like
Yeah,
if you say like you are terminating an instance and
hmm,
you still want to preserve your volume,
very correct.
so still you have to pay the volume cost. But again,
Yes.
like you don't have to pay the 1 terabyte cost. You
Hmm.
just have to pay the 100 GB or whatever volume that you are, the size you are consuming there.
Okay.
So Jatin touched one term here, which is known as instant store. So let me discuss two lines about it, not much. So whenever we create a virtual machine, by default it uses a EBS volumes attached to it for the default storage. So what is the purpose of EBS is like it is a persistent storage. When you delete your instance or when you shut down your instance and next time you start that instance, you will have all the details saved on the instance. Whatever things you have installed, whatever configurations you have saved, those configurations will be available after you shut down and restart the machine. And even if you terminate, there will be option to take a backup of that thing as a snapshot, and using that snapshot you can create another virtual machine, so you will get all the configurations persisted there. But in case of instance store, the data is not persistent. It means it's something like a RAM, like you have a virtual machine which is running, you are doing many tasks, and as soon as you shut down that machine, all the data on that host will be lost. So that is the major difference between instance store and EBS volume. And instance store are much cheaper than EBS volume because they are not a persistent storage, it is just a storage temporarily. So there are specific use case. Many people say like why we need this, if data is getting lost, so what is the requirement of having instant store? So there are specific use cases, especially in terms of big data, where you want to have a big Hadoop clusters and you want to add compute power at runtime for the temporary computation, and you don't want to persist. So those are the various areas and scenarios where you can use instant store. But yeah, EBS volumes are the, I'll say, is the root of the virtual machine. So whenever you create EBS volume, 99% you will be end up using the elastic block storage. Yeah, so here Dipali has just shown created one virtual machine, and here we can see like the device root type is the EBS store, and we can also attach more volume. So this is the volume ID. We can detach this volume ID from this virtual machine, but if it is the only volume attached here, then we need to shut down the virtual machine and then remove it. And on the left hand side, if we can scroll down in the menu, here you will get a separate section for the EBS, elastic block store, so where you can create volumes. So here in the above you can create a new volume and later on attach that volume to the virtual machine. So maybe you guys can try this as an exercise, that by default you'll get a C drive on Windows. So create a Windows instance, observe the C drive, then create a new volume and attach that volume to the machine and see if you will be able to get a D drive as well, additional D drive. And with EBS volume, there are default snapshot as well. Like if you scroll right, and in the snapshot, you can see like a default snapshot is created. So it keeps the data persistent in the same availability zone and across availability zone as well. So by default, this volume will be available to all the virtual machines which are there in the same availability zone. But if you want these to be available to other availability zone, then you can take a snapshot and share the snapshot to other availability zone or regions. So this is how you can share the data.
Yeah, maybe just to add on or to reiterate, like whenever you create any EC2 machine, you get root volume by default. So this is the volume which we are seeing. This is actually the volume which is attached to the EC2 machine I just created. So root volume is like non-persistent volume. The moment you terminate your machine, you get option. By default, it gets deleted, but there is option that if you want to preserve this root volume, you can do so, but you can add other EBS volume as well, which you can use as a persistent volume. And those EBS volume you can detach and attach to other EC2 instances. So for example, let me quickly show anyways. So if we create a volume
So
here,
Dipali,
yeah.
by default, this when the storage is allocated, this is non-EBS, is it? When we spin the machine.
Oh, this is EBS, but in EBS also
Okay.
like you have different categories. So
Okay.
for example, when I'm creating here, so it is asking me the volume type. So these are the different categories which are available. Okay. So we can create a general
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
one. We can create a provisioned IOPS. We can create a cold volume as well. So in EBS itself, there are different categories.
Uh,
Okay.
Rajat, just a quick question. So you said when we create an EC2 instance, by default, the storage will be created. What if I want to create one more storage and tap that storage with multiple virtual machine across availability zone? Is it possible?
Yeah, so there are other options like then you have a S3, which is simple storage service, or the elastic file service, using which you can share the storage space with other virtual machines, something like a shared drive, which will be available to all the virtual machines, and they can keep and write the data, but they cannot install on those shared storage. For the installation, you can only install on the EBS volumes because this is the block storage service where you can install data.
Yeah, and whatever like different storage services or different storage mechanisms are available, EBS is the most costly one. So people use EBS very diligently whenever they need to really install something. They do this part in on EBS, but when you need some storage just to dump some data or archive, so there are other cheaper storage available. So those should be used for those needs. So EBS is something which can be attached to one machine at one point in time. If you want to attach same EBS volume to a different machine, you need to detach from machine one and then attach to machine two. It
Yeah, one more
cannot be a
thing.
shared storage.
So you can still do the sharing which is available at operating system level, something like in Windows, you right click and share this drive with other user. So you can do that sharing with the users for copying the data. But the current sharing that we say is like at one point of a time, this storage can only be attached to one virtual machine. Like there will be only one owner, but at a operating system level, you can still allow access to other users.
Yeah, so when you are working with Linux machine, by default, you get 8 GB root volume. But if you need more storage there, this is how we can create volumes. That we go into the volume section, create additional volume, and you can create volume of any size. Similarly, in case of Windows, we get default root volume is of 30 GB. So here we can choose that what kind of storage we want to create. Here we can define size and this thing is very important here, that this volume should be created in the same availability zone as of your EC2 machine. So you just need to verify that exactly where you have created your EC2 machine, because if you're creating it in the different availability zone, it will not be visible for you to use. So we have created this one in 1B. So if I create this volume in 1B, only then it will be available uh, for attachment with this machine. Okay, so this is how we can simply create volume. And okay, let me do that and I'll drop it. So the moment we create, you see the status means for first one, it is showing status in use. As of now, it is creating, but the moment it is created, it will be available. So now it is available. Then we can go to actions and go for attach volume. And there we can attach this volume with any of these instances. Since in 1B, I have only one instance running, so I can attach this volume to this instance. So this is how it normally works. Any questions? I'm not attaching because I'm just going to delete this. Because I don't want to pay unnecessary for this storage, which...
Yeah, Dinesh here. So for free tier, is there any costing for these storage services, ESB?
Yes. So
yes.
there is a costing to everything. The only difference in free tier is like you'll get some amount for free for some few limited days. Like for EBS, you can get up to 20 GB as a free for 20 days. But if you keep your running instance for more than 20 days in a month, then you have to pay the cost for it. So when you go to the billing section, there will be a separate section for the free tier.
And this is how you can check the billing, that on top right corner, it will be showing your account alias or the account number. There you can go into the billing dashboard.
So we can play around with 20 GB, right? Rather than going with 100 GB for free tier. And we need to kill the volume within 24 hours so that we can be safe. It's not costing to our credit card.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
so here this is the free tier link. So if you just means whatever services you are trying, just check the limit of the free tier. So let's say we are talking about EBS. Nothing is with name EBS, maybe storage. Somehow I'm not getting anything.
So there is a separate section. Let me share. I think you have already consumed your quota, Dipali. That is why it's
Looks
not
like, yeah,
showing you.
because my
Yeah.
account is pretty old, so that's why I'm not getting free tiers.
So the free tier usage that you have, it is applicable only for the first year when you create an account. Like if you created your account in October 22, so the free tier is available in your account only for 1 year up till 23 October 23. Post that, it generally removes all the free tier usages from your system. So this is a separate link shared by AWS which talks about the criteria for all level of free tier, and it says like it is valid for 12 months from your initial account sign up date. And there are some services which are like always free, but yeah, in free tier you can see here Amazon S3 which is 5 GB of data you can keep for 12 months as a free. Then content delivery 1 TB, storage EFS 5 GB. So yeah, these are Elastic Block Store. You can see 30 GB is free here.
This one.
Yeah, as a standard SDD, not the other options, right?
Okay. Thanks for the information. Yeah.
So this is how you can check if you're not sure.
So, Dipali and Rajat, couple of questions. If I delete a virtual machine, you said that I have an option to preserve the volume, uh, but I do not get any option when I delete any virtual machine.
So when you create a virtual machine, there is a default um, tag which is known as delete on termination. So by default, that flag is on. It means like whenever you whenever you terminate the machine, it will delete the root storage as well. So you need to uncheck that flag while creating a virtual machine.
Okay,
So
got it. The second,
yes. So
yeah,
this delete on termination is very important in terms of exam as well. Though it's very rare now, but earlier it was a very pet question like how we can set the option of delete on termination on off and before creating a virtual machine, or what if we already created a virtual machine, how we can toggle this flag. But sometimes I observe like there is still a question around this topic.
Yeah, and another thing to remember here that whenever you are simply stopping the instances, means you are releasing the compute, but you are not releasing the volume. So you will still be charged for that storage. But if you are terminating the instance, by default, it is releasing both. So there will be no further charges on your machine. So let's say if we are going on this terminate instance option, so will be so it is giving us this warning. But Rajat, do you recall? Means I think something has changed on this screen. Do you recall where we get that option?
I think you need
Choose
to
the
go to edit
termination button.
settings. Yeah, cancel this. Go to action and then in instance setting, check in instance setting.
Change
Yeah,
stop
change termination protection,
termination
the second one.
protection.
Right,
Yeah. So here we need to enable or disable.
right. So it says like to prevent your instance terminating storage, so you can use this flag.
okay.
I hope it clarifies. Yeah.
Yes, the second, I mean, this is not a question, but this is something which I understood is when we create a virtual machine, by default, we can select EBS and then we can typically attach multiple volumes, which could be not EBS, but other form factors, maybe another type of storage. Is that right?
Right, right. So EBS is the bare minimum that you require. So it is kind of a C drive, a minimum thing that require the EBS to start. And then additionally, you can attach any other storage services which are available by Amazon.
Yeah, thanks, Rajat.
Okay.
Okay, let me keep this instance running for time being. We may need to discuss other things.
Right,
Okay,
right. So
Rajat,
let's
start.
jump on to the PPT and
Yeah,
let about more description on EBS. So
yeah.
again, let me read out the details now from PPT. We have already discussed all these points, but still, let's read out.
I was just checking if I have any like in the running mode, but no, I didn't add.
Okay.
So Rajat, one question on this creation of these storage instances. There is something called snapshot as well. What
Yes.
exactly is that?
So snapshot is a backup in case you want to take a backup of your C drive or virtual machine. So you can do that. So AWS also take automatic backup. You can disable that. Like I think they take backup by default after every 2 days or 3 days. So if you think like your data is more important, you can enable snapshot every 1 hour. And you can also schedule like how many old backups you want to keep. You want to keep backup of last 10 days or last 10 backup, how much backup you want to keep. So that is what Amazon can do that as a backup. Like in case you lost your machine or you install something which is not required, you can just revert to the older version of snapshot. That is the easiest way. And but again, snapshots are again costly. So another way to save cost on snapshot is like take a snapshot and store the snapshot on S3 storage. So S3 storage is cheaper than EBS storage. So when you keep your snapshots in S3, then it will help you to reduce the cost as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Rajat.
Okay. So like the very first thing says Elastic Block Store provides persistent block storage volume. This is the most important thing. Persistent block storage volumes to use within EC2 instances. Then each Amazon EBS volume is automatically replicated within its availability zone. Like so, you don't have to do any additional configuration. If you have procured one virtual machine, AWS will take care of its availability. They keep on storing it within the same availability zone. In case this machine goes down or you lost the data, you Amazon can recover that machine for you automatically. You don't have to do this, and it helps in component failure, offering high availability and durability for the data. But based on your requirement, your organization requirement, you can also enable the snapshot feature, and you can schedule snapshots. You can take snapshot at any point of time, and yeah, there is various other things that you can do, and for that you need to pay additional cost for managing the snapshots. So that is the additional overhead. Guys, please go on mute if you guys are not speaking. Yeah, thank you. Then we have EBS volumes can be backed up by creating snapshot of the volume, which is stored in Amazon S3 buckets to save cost. And later on, the EBS snapshots can be attached to the other instances within the same region. So again, whatever is snapshots you are creating, they will be available only the same region. Something like if you created in North Virginia, so all those snapshots will be available only in North Virginia. As Dipali showed, like you have option to select the same volume which is in the same availability zone, but snapshots will be across all availability zone, but within the same region. So if you want to copy the same snapshot onto different regions, something like India, Mumbai, then you need to do it via the internet, like take a S3 storage, then copy it there and then download from there. So there is a long route. You can still do it, but it's not available by default. So you can see like EBS volumes are created in a specific availability zone and can be attached to any instance in the same availability zone only. They are not shared across availability zones by default, but using snapshot, you can also do that. Any question on this before we move further? Okay. So before starting with the next topic, let me talk about um, one more interesting concept is like we talk about the billing. So we says like we created another volume which was of 100 GB and we are not using it, but still we have to pay for it till the time that volume exists there in Amazon EC2. though it is a per hour basis billing, but still we have to pay for it. So there is a very interesting pricing model for one component which is known as elastic IP. So AWS has a concept of an elastic IP within the compute only. You can see in parallel to load balancer, you will also get an option to look for an elastic IP. So elastic IPs are the way to create a IP on the runtime and then share it across with different systems like load balancer or EC2 machines. And the interesting pricing model is like if you create a elastic IP and if you start using it, then it is free of cost. But if you create a elastic IP and if you are not using it, then you have to pay the payment for it. So it's the other way around. Like if you shut down the machine, then you don't have to pay the cost for CPU RAM. But if you don't use the elastic IP, if it is a free elastic IP, then you have to pay the cost. And if you start using it, then you don't have to pay the cost for it. So there's a very interesting pricing models introduced by AWS for different components. So it's good to learn. So there are some questions around elastic IP as well. You can expect in both cloud practitioner and solution architect exam as well. Like there are three elastic IPs in your organization, and two elastic IPs are idle or not usable. One is in use. So how much elastic IP charge you will get? So some kind of a these type of scenario question you can get.
Yeah, other day we have seen the scenario that just to get rid of these changing IPs things, we created a load balancer on top of it so we can have a static URL. But let's say your use case does not demand a load balancer. You just want to deal with one machine. So Elastic IP is the way that you can reserve a IP and attach that Elastic IP to your machine. So it always has the static IP available. But as Rajat mentioned, if you are using it, then there will be no charge. If you are not using it, then you need to pay for this.
So any queries, any questions on this point?
And you know, this is a like exam question as well as the interview question. Okay, I think Rajat, we can move on to the S3.
Sure. So we discussed like EBS. Actually, it is also part of storage service, but we discuss it separately because that is the default storage attached to the virtual machine. So what are the other storage options which are available to us? The very first is known as Amazon S3. It is an S3 is a short form for simple storage service. And S3 is very popular. I think it is one of the initial service which was launched by Amazon initially. So EC2 and S3 is there from the beginning, and I'll say S3 is even more in use in actual practical scenario than EC2. So like I think S3 is the highest use service as of now for AWS, and it's going to be because you can use it in multiple use cases. You don't need virtual machine every time, but you can keep your data. You can use it for multiple purposes, and they have even enhanced it. So we'll show like what are the different powers in S3 and how much powerful it is now to even host a website. It can even host a complete website as well.
Right. It is like the best storage solution available till date if you compare even any other cloud provider as well. So even if you like work, if you're adopting, let's say GCP, but still, I think when you compare the pricing and features, you prefer to put your storage, you prefer to use storage service as S3 because it is very cost effective, very much durable, and it has like rich features.
And it is very much in use, like you might not have noticed, but whenever you get any bill from Airtel or Vodafone, or if you open any of these kind of a PDFs online, or any of the OTT updates that you get for your mobile phone operating system, all those are being put on S3. And whenever you notice the URL, you will see a S3 in the URL. So I'll say 99% nowadays people are using S3 links. So now notice any of your PDF bill or any of the PDF exports which are generated by the public websites, you will always find a S3 URL there. So S3 is again a very cheap storage, but it is an active storage kind of a area. Then there is a solution known as Amazon Glacier, which is specifically for an archival. We'll discuss all these things in detail, but just giving a high level overview here. Then we have Elastic Block Store that we have already discussed, like it is a root drive and a area where we can install things. So there is a fundamental difference between block store and object store. We'll also discuss that in the coming slide. Then we have a Elastic File System, which is a EFS, shared file storage, in case we want to create a common storage which needs to be shared with all systems. So then we can use EFS. And then we also have a solution like AWS Storage Gateways. So this is a hybrid storage between when you want to perform a data migration or data linking from on-premise to the cloud environment. Like you have some application running within your organization and they carry a lot of data. And then you want to share that data over to the cloud. So you can use storage gateway features. And then we have a AWS Snowball. This is also a very good solution to share even a very big size of data. It comes in a hand of like a physical storage. So when you use AWS Snowball, they share the physical storage devices with you that you can bring in your organization, copy the data, and then they connect that to the AWS and then import that data in their organization. So these are the different storage services which are available. Even there will be more options, but these are the high level in most use options you will see. Okay, so let's talk about can we go back as well, Dipali? One more thing I want to discuss. So what Amazon has done, like you can see like in the bottom diagram, you can see a different type of icons and some color coding as well. So that I want to discuss, like for Amazon, they have created a very good glossary of the icons that they use. So they have given a unique icons, a color coding. For storage, you will see like this dark orange or a maroonish kind of a color is used for all storage. Whereas for EC2, for compute services, you'll notice in an orange color coding. So there's a specific icon as well as the text also written onto the icons as well. Like for EC2, it is written in white and it is a kind of a rounded square. For other than this, you'll have a EBS volume. So whenever you design any architecture, I'll recommend to use AWS icons only so that it looks more professional. And just looking into the icon, people can easily make out like which service you want to use and what are the different ways. So you can see like S3 and Glacier are the similar icons. It's just like the Glacier is embedded inside a gray gray cube. So these are the icons that we recommend to use for any architectures on AWS. Okay, so let's talk about the S3 simple storage service. So before we start with it, so it is one of the object storage type available on cloud. So can somebody talk about what is object storage? Can you try to explain what is object storage and how it is different from block storage?
So block storage is
Yeah, Rohit, go ahead.
Yeah, block storage is basically a volume which is given from the backend, and then that volume is basically given in blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to kind of consume it in blocks as compared to a kind of an object storage which is not given in blocks, and it is readily available where we can typically use it in terms of storing large amount of data as compared to storing large amount of data in blocks, is what I understand.
I'll say explained it. You have explained it very well, but it is more technical. Like if you talk about more in layman terms, so if someone is from a technical background, this definition is very easy to understand. But if you need to explain it to a normal person maybe in a non-technical form, then how you can explain?
Rajat, I'm guessing here. I think the object storage is more distributed. The It is not stored in continuous blocks. And in EBS, you get the continuous block for the high read and IO speed.
Again, it's very good, but again, I'll say too technical. More simpler.
Rajat, Shamal here. I think object storage is like we can store objects in the sense things like metadata, video files, audio files, kind of. So each file, like audio file or video file, those are called. Each of them is called an object. So that is
Correct.
what object storage is.
Correct, correct. All are right definitions. So let me try to make it more simplify. So elastic block storage, you can say, is like all the files stored as a single, as a whole. Like if you store one file, which is abc.txt or abc.mp4, the file is stored all together at a same place in a sequence. And in object storage, it can stored in a distributed manner. It can store at any location, but when you receive that file, it will combine the storage combine the files, and then create another new file to share with you. So the major difference is like on block storage, it stores the same file as a whole, whereas it cuts the file on object storage and then store in a different location, so it's not in sequence. So as Rupesh says, it's a distributed. Rohit said like it is stored in a form of object. Same is told by Shamal. So all are correct, but just a layman term. Um, it's stored as a single unit in on block storage, but in object storage, it is cut down into small pieces and then stored. Now coming to the technical thing, in block storage, you have a file tables. I'll say FAT or NTFS. These are the file tables, file indexes, which are managed by operating system to identify the location and the storage of the file. Whereas in object storage, each file has its own indexing, which is something like linked list. One part is stored which has a pointer to the second part, and then second part is stored which has a pointer to the previous and the next part. So it is stored in form of scattered objects in linked list type of structure, whereas in block storage it is shared in the form of indexing, like its start and end points are given in the index. So S3 is very powerful storage, and you can put a very large size of data in S3. That is the very big power. Like I'm jumping to the point in between. Like you can store anywhere from 0 bytes to 5 terabytes of a file size for single file. You can store up to a 5 terabyte file size on S3, and the best purpose of S3 is like it is designed in a way to deliver a very high durability and very high availability. So if you see like 99.9999, there are so many nine, it is known as 11 nines durability and 4 nines availability to store and maintain the data. So can anyone explain like what is durability and what is availability?
Availability is something which means is that my storage will be available throughout the year, and this is the SLA which they have defined, which is 99.99%.
Correct.
I am not really sure on durability.
Durability, I think, is more related to being able to retrieve the data. So once you have saved a certain data, you can retrieve it in the form you saved it. I mean, it's not altered or it's not lost.
Correct, correct. Yeah, very well said, both of you. So availability says like whenever you want to access the data will be available. And durability says like the guarantee, if you have stored the data will be remain in the same state, in the same state that you stored. So there are atomic concept like I'll say in consistency of the data, and all those parameters are maintained in durability. Like your data will not be altered, it will be in the same state as you have stored. So, and there are high chances that there will not be any data corruption or data loss. So that is durability. And availability is like it is available on demand. Whenever you want to access it, it will be available. And in the back end, there are lots of things that they keep it, like they They store the multiple devices, they share it across multiple availability zone to manage it. So let's read the next point. S3 objects are automatically stored across multiple devices spanning a minimum of 3 availability zone, each separated by miles across an AWS region. So that is what it is saying. Even we are saving one object on S3 bucket, by default Amazon store it onto 3 different availability zone. It copies it onto different availability zones for maintaining the 11 nines durability of that storage of that data. So
Rajat
yeah.
and Dinesh, so as you said, like the S3 will split the file and then store in different location.
Mm-hmm.
And on demand, it will combine and it will serve as a single file, right? Say,
Right.
example, if any of the part is failed due to the hardware failure,
Yes.
is there any a mirroring and backup mechanism is happening in the back end
Yes.
so that it will
Correct.
available for the durability of the data will be 99.99?
Right. So by default, that's what Amazon is saying. Like it will store your data onto 3 different availability zone, so that you will have 3 copies in different physical locations. And in case of a hardware failure, one location can go down, second location can have a failure, but you can still retrieve it from the third zone. Also, so again, let me talk about is like when we talk about durability or the security. So Amazon by default provide a good set of security and durability, which means like you don't have to do any customization, you don't have to worry. They will take guarantee of the retrieval of data and the security as well. But there is a concept of shared security model, which we'll be discussing later as well, how users can enhance the security and the availability of such things. So by default Amazon stores on different availability zones, but you can also enable versioning on the S3. So like if you're putting any data, that data is known as version 1. If you copy that data, it will become version 2, version 3. So you can also maintain version history to improve the availability of the data, durability of the data. So by default also there are good options. You can customize as well, increase or decrease as per your wish. But if you increase, you'll have to pay the additional cost to Amazon. So this holds true for all the services. For EC2 as well, by default it provides you a good set of control. If you enable more configuration, customize things, then it will start adding more cost to you guys. So options are there, but you have to pay more cost for those additional options.
Yeah, and Dinesh, one thing to highlight here that when we are saying that when you are storing one file, then it is getting replicated to other availability zones as well. So it is not the case that file is being splitted. The complete file is being replicated to other
Yeah,
availability
that's what I want
zones.
to understand. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
no worries.
Okay. So moving to the next point.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. So when you say it is synced in 3 availability zones, can we able to say which availability zone it has to be synced? Because
No. Yeah, so that is not in our control. It is default managed by AWS, like on which availability zone they want to save and how they save it, because it is their default mechanism. We cannot configure that by default. But yeah, if you want to enhance features like versioning, or if you want to enable some scheduled backups, then we can do. And at that time, we can specify the in which availability zone we want to do. Like if you want to specify anything, or we can say any available availability zone. So those are the options which are available in customization.
okay.
And here, if we try to understand the differences, the way EC2 and S3 work. So in EC2, if you are trying to achieve the high availability, the way we did on day one when we created load balancer, that we stored same application in 2 different availability zone. So we ourselves did that configuration. So we are provisioning for high availability there. But in S3, like we are not doing anything for high availability, but Amazon behind the scene is ensuring that yes, our data is highly available. So that's how S3 is known as fully managed service. So in Amazon, like there are set of services where you will see it is a fully managed service from Amazon. So what do we mean by fully managed service? That we really don't need to do anything extra for high availability and scaling of that service. For scaling means, like in EC2 we said, okay, if we need to scale our application, we can like create multiple machines. Like if we want to scale our application, currently it is running on two machines, and let's say we want, in case of any sale or those kind of offers things, we when we expect more load on the server, we can provision to scale it on, let's say, 8 machines. So that scaling is something which we need to configure ourselves. But if we want to put more and more data in S3, we really need not to do anything. So Amazon will take care that the moment we will store file, it will give us a storage. So means it will be stored without any additional configuration.
So another question on the same thing. If that is the case, if say if we are storing any customer information as objects into this S3, and if there is any law available saying that the data has to reside in that same area of where the application, like say UK data has to reside in UK and India data has to reside in India, or something like that. So what is the architectural direction? Do we use S3 or do we have different
Yeah,
option
we
to it?
can use S3. So see, S3 is again a regional service. The way when we created EC2 machine, we picked the region first. That okay, I want to create this machine in Northern Virginia, or if you're working in for UK population, maybe you would like to create that machine in Ireland region, right? Similarly, you can create your S3 bucket in the region where you want to really where you for which population you want to create this data, or wherever your law demands that you should be keeping data in that region itself. So you need to create your bucket there itself.
Okay, so within the region they will do and within the availability zone. Okay, not cross region.
Yeah. So region is there, but yes, you really need not to choose any availability zone here. And when you are trying to store any secure data, then there are a few other mechanism as well, that maybe you can encrypt this data. And there is another service which is called Macy, where you can actually mask few specific information. Let's say if you are storing customer information, their account number or credit card numbers. So Macy is the service which help us like implement additional level of security on top of S3 data.
Right. So you can also provide the type of encryption when you enable encryption, and you can also share your own encryption keys in case you want to encrypt the data up to a next level. But again, if you encrypt the data, it will impact the speed of the data retrieval, because it has to decrypt and then do this. And another important thing is like it is the storage is like an immutable storage. Like whenever you save any file and you retrieve the file, you'll retrieve a copy of that file. The original file is never retrieved. You'll always retrieve a copy of that file. And when you change anything on the file and re-upload, then also it is a second copy of the file. So all the files, it just copy and replicate the data. It don't allow you to make the changes on the same data. It is an immutable storage.
Yeah, so you can imagine it like your picture file. If you're storing any picture, there is no way you can simply update that picture. Means whenever you want to change anything in that picture, you actually overwrite that file with a new picture, right? So it's the same thing. That complete object need to be replaced. You cannot update the parts of that object.
Right.
Ranjit, I have a question. You said about versioning. So when we create a version of the object, so by default, that version is also replicated in other availability zones, or it is specific to that availability zone only?
Yes, yes. So even versions are replicated in different availability zones by default. So you don't have to worry about that manually.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the only difference of version is like if you're on the 10th version, then anytime you can revert back to the first version, which is maybe created 1 year ago. So you can still revert to that version. But if you don't enable the versioning, the file will be there, but you cannot revert back to the older version. So that is the difference. And one more important thing to note is like S3 is a universal namespace. So it uses a universal namespace. Means if I have created one my account, then you cannot use Rajat name in any of your accounts. So it is not account specific. It is a universal namespace across all users of S3. So that is why it becomes very difficult to create a bucket on AWS if you're using common names. So if you try to create a bucket with name demo bucket or my bucket or training bucket, it will complain like bucket already exists. So bucket does not exist in your account. It maintains a common namespace, because of which it says to use a unique name. So it's better to define a naming convention for your organization, something like organization name hyphen or underscore, then project name underscore the file name, so that you can maintain the uniqueness on the bucket. So once the bucket is created, then you can have duplicate files in fact in your bucket, then it becomes your private namespace. So things are not that complicated. Once we show a demo, then I think you can relate more to it. Um, Another thing is like S3 is a fully managed service, as Dipali says. So it is basically based on a REST API protocol. It exposes a REST API default. So it acts as a HTTP interface to save and retrieve your files. So by default, whatever actions you will perform, upload, download, those will all be performed on the HTTP protocol. So you can use it as a REST API as well in case you want to upload and download the data. And then there is an option like once data is stored in Amazon, it can be automatically tiered into lower cost long term. So if you have copied one file on S3 bucket, which is a very huge file, say you have uploaded 10 big movies on S3 bucket, but you have not seen or accessed those movies for 2 months. So by default, what S3 will do, it will degrade that to the lower cost tier, that you are not accessing that data too frequently. So it will tear down that data to the lower tier so that you can save cost. So this is known as Glacier. We'll discuss that as well in detail. But based on your usage, Amazon automatically takes decisions like if you're not frequently using that data, then put that data into archival storage so that you can save cost. So yesterday we discussed like we have components like trusted advisor in Amazon, which keeps on scanning your usage, which keeps on scanning your layout on Amazon, and also suggests the cost optimization and performance optimization. So this S3 is a fully managed service. So by default, it provides that cost optimizations. Also, S3 guarantees a high availability by replicating data across many servers in the same region, but multiple availability zones, not across multiple regions. And it also provides read after write consistency for all update operations. And yeah, again, eventually consists of overwrite of puts and deletes, which are the abbreviations of REST API. So move further. I think we have a demo
I
on
think
S3.
let's spend a minute in understanding these two last points. That what do we mean by read after write consistency for puts? Means put is a API call when you are like creating a new file here. So whenever you are creating a new file, then you get read after write consistency, which means the new file will be available immediately after it is created. As we said, like when you're creating a file, it is getting stored between different availability zones, at least 3 availability zones. So it might be the case that let's say I stored file in AZA, but my user is trying to access that file from AZC. So there might be a milliseconds delay, but this delay is not there in case when we are creating a new file. So the moment I'm creating a file in AZA, it will be immediately available in all the regions, all the availability zones. But if I'm updating or deleting, this is the second statement, that eventual consistency for overrides. So if I'm updating that file or deleting a file, so it might happen that in AZA I save the updated file, but in AZB my users are still looking at the older version. So that might be the case for fraction of milliseconds. So that is these two statements means, and you will see a question around this in exam. That what do we
Sorry,
mean by?
Dipali, can you explain again?
Yeah, sure.
With some
So read
scenarios, yeah.
after write consistency. So means we can read the moment we write. Okay, so this is like read and write are consistent for new objects. Quotes mean new object. Whenever we are creating a new file, we can immediately read it from any availability zone. But when we are updating or deleting any existing file, then there can be a delay when we are trying to read from other availability zone, and that is known as eventual consistency, that our data will be eventually consistent. Okay, so eventual consistency for
it means that
overrides. Hmm.
it's taking some time to sync between
Yes,
the
yes.
zones, and
Yeah.
but it will ultimately do it.
Yeah, it will ultimately do that. There can be a fraction of millisecond delay, but this is not holding good for any new objects. For any new objects, it is immediately available.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Yes, Rajat, back to you.
Yeah, I think before discussing Glacier, it will be good if you can give a demo on S3, a quick demo.
Okay, sure.
Can you go to the next slide? I think it is after Glacier. We have a demo slide. Yeah, this one.
Okay, means we can do it at any stage. If you feel we can do now, let's do that. Otherwise, if you're happy to cover Glacier, we can park it for next 5 minutes.
Sure, sure. So let's talk about Glacier. So as we discussed, like S3 is a storage service with then built-in features to lower down the cost. So Glacier is another sub-service or the name of service in S3, which provide a different cost tiering based on the frequency of the accessibility of the data. So let's take an example first. What is the major difference between current account and saving account? When we open our account in bank, then we have a three type of accounts: fixed deposits account. The second one is a current account, or maybe the saving account is second one, and the third one is the current account. So what is the major difference is like for current account, we'll say like it is the most frequently accessed data. It is generally proposed for the businessmen who do daily multiple transactions in their account. Like they're doing hundreds of transactions on daily basis. So current account is recommended. They're doing debits and credits, giving payments, receiving money. That is the purpose. And then the second level is savings account. So earlier the definition was like you'll be withdrawing or depositing money in saving accounts 5 to 10 times in a month. That was the frequency when the ATMs were not there or the online banking was not there. So that was the definition, the bookish definition for the saving accounts, that you get your salary in the saving account, you withdraw all or half of the salary on one day, and then you withdraw rest of the money. So there will be very less transactions, but with the advent of all this like electronic things, online payments, now even we are doing thousands of transactions in saving account on daily basis. And there was a different charging model. So saving accounts were used to give us the interest rates up to 2 to 4%, whereas for current accounts, people have to pay money to bank to allow the transactions. So there were costs associated to the current account, like you have to pay 500 per month as a fees to the bank for doing so many transactions in your current account. And the third one is a fixed deposit. You'll say to the bank like you're giving a commitment, you'll keep the money untouched for minimum period of 1 year to 5 year or maybe a longer term, and then you will get a benefit of additional interest rates. So in the same way, if you use S3 buckets, so if you are too much frequently accessing the S3 buckets, that you will be paying up the high cost, because if you're too frequently accessing, they need to manage the similar level of backups, read and write operations on the buckets. But if you keep a data and you do not access this too frequently, like once in 3 months, so they will default tear it down to the Glacier storage, and which is more cheaper than S3, and it is slower as well. So once your file is moved to the Glacier area and you request for the file, so it may take up to 4 or 5 minutes to get that file back to you. And then there is another concept of deep Glacier. Like if you have not accessed the data for 1 year or 2 year, then those files go into the deep Glacier, which can take up to few hours to retrieve, but the cost will also reduce by 80%. So let's take an example like few newspaper companies like Times of India, Hindustan Times, they still maintain the copy of their newspapers, which are even 100 years old. Even when they initially started, they still have the electronic copy, but it is not a frequently accessed data, but it's for the historical purpose, or it's for their um, I'll say USP, like they are having all the news which are even published 100 years back. They want to keep this data. So there is no point of keeping that data in S3 because no one is going to read a 100-year-old news now. So they can use a storage like Glacier or Deep Glacier where they can put the old data and they can save the cost as well. And in case they want to retrieve it, they can afford the retrieval time, like a few hours would be good enough to retrieve the data will be retrieved, but the time will be higher to retrieve the data. So for those kind of a use cases you can use Glacier. So again, I'll take a use case of NetWest. So we are here required to maintain the customer history, customer transaction for last 7 years as per the policy. Again, the 7 years data is not frequently accessed data, so we can keep active data up till 2 years in an active storage, and any data which is older than 2 years, we can put into the Glacier storage, and we can save cost there. So this is how you can use various components in your application to manage the costing factor and the performance of the application. Any questions here?
Yeah, Rajat. Say example, I have a object in S3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And after 6 months, there is no activity to that object, so it's moved to the Glacier. Okay. Right. Is there any change in the reference URI or?
No, everything remains same. No, there is no changes from the consumer perspective. You will use the same name, you will use the same URL. It's the backend storages which the Amazon used to keep them safe. So it's the backend only change, not the front end. Like the accessibility mechanism, everything will not change. Only the backend storage areas will be different for them.
And the only change for user would be the retrieval time. So if it is there in the standard S3, then like you can retrieve it then and there. But if it is there in the Glacier, you will need to wait for a few minutes or few hours basis the kind of retrievals mentioned here. That in Glacier we have three different classes of retrievals. That if you are storing it in the expedited retrieval, then you can get this data in up to 5 minutes. If you are storing in Glacier standard, then retrieval time will be between 3 to 5 hours, and in the bulk retrieval it will be like 5 to 12 hours. So maximum there can be a 12 hours delay when you are trying to retrieve that data from Glacier.
So this Glacier is one way to keep even a large data or more data, but with a lesser cost. So you can categorize your data and you can save more data with less cost. That is where the Glacier comes into the picture. It's not required or must to use Glacier. It's up to your user requirement or up to your organization requirement whether you want or not. And you can even disable, like if the data is not used for last 6 months, still it should not go to the Glacier space by default. You can also enable those type of settings. You can configure as well. You can reduce if the files are not used for 15 days, then also they should go to Glacier. So there are ways you can configure in your S3 console. But this is one way, like you can put more data and you can reduce cost as well. Because when you're designing on cloud, there are two major factors: performance as well as the cost, reduction in the cost. So you have to optimize both the options. You should also keep, like if you are designing a very high performance system but it is very costly, then it's not a right architecture. It should come with the low cost benefits. That is the main purpose of cloud. I'll take one more example, maybe the last example. Like there are so many mobile phones available in the market. Some mobile phones pioneer in the camera area. Some mobile phones pioneer in the range of processors. Like they use the latest Snapdragon Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, the latest Gen processor, but they are not good efficient in battery. Some mobiles are good in battery, they're not good in other features. So that is what, like you need to balance out. You need to give your application as an offering which will have a mixed combination for your customers, like a good processor, good camera. You may be lacking in the battery, but that should give you a good access to your consumers to the services. So this is how you need to balance out. You cannot have everything in a single architecture. So there are different options to manage. So similar, like if you want to manage this kind of a thing on premise, so it does not matter, like you call it Glacier, you call it whatever. If you're putting data on the server, you are ending up with the same cost as a live server. So but in the cloud you have these features where you can save cost. Great. I think we can move to the demo now, or maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, keep asking if you're getting any questions. So here, like either I can search S3 in this search box. I can simply type S3 here and access the S3, or maybe I can go to this services, and then in services, it's there in the storage section. So here it is there at the bottom. So in storage, we can see various storage services, which we just discussed. So from here also, you can access S3. Both the approaches will take you to the same S3 dashboard.
Hello.
Yeah.
Once I will place the file in EBS volume, can I able to edit the file?
Yes, you can.
How about in S3?
No, in S3 you cannot edit the file. You will need to download that file and make changes, and then you will need to upload that file again, and it will create a new version.
Okay. Can I know for which scenarios I can go for EBS and which scenarios I can go for S3?
So S3 is majorly for S3 is majorly for like keeping the file storage. So in case you want to run any software, then you cannot run that software on S3 bucket. You cannot run Java files. You cannot run Java program. In case you want to run Java programs, you can do that in EC2. And in case those Java programs want to read some PDF file, generate and keep some PDF file, then for keeping those PDF, instead of using the EBS, you can put those PDF file on S3. So I just shared one link. So I got this officially from Airtel website. So in Airtel, they provide a family plans as well. Like with one plan, you can connect multiple numbers of your family and you can save costs. So this is a FAQ, which is I found on their official site. And you can see, like, whenever I'm opening this PDF, it is taking me to an S3 URL. So this PDF is actually posted on an Amazon S3, and this is being shared with the customers. So you can see, like, this is how you can notice nowadays, whenever you go for any PDF bill or you go for any of the OTT updates, you'll majorly saw this S3 URL there. Does that answer your question, or still a doubt there?
Yeah, I'm clear now. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hi, Rajat Rupesh here. I want to ask a question about the security around S3. You just showed me like we can access documents if we want those documents to be restricted.
Yes.
What is this?
Right. So by default, all the documents are restricted. They're available only to the person who is owning that account. So here in the screen, you can see like few red marks, which is showing as public. So only these buckets are public, means like they will be available on the internet, but others are not. So there are different level of security there. So I think once we give the demo, we'll be explaining that as well in detail.
Yeah, Rupesh. So as we discussed other day, like it follows the least security principle, which means that whenever we are creating any like service in here, by default it has no access. It don't have any access. Wherever means whosoever we want to give access, we need to explicitly give that access. By default, everything is blocked. Okay. So now let's try to see to create a new bucket here. So these are the like multiple buckets which are already available in my account. And here, if you try to see the difference, the one thing which Rajat pointed out, that different access levels, few buckets, we are saying bucket and objects are not public. For few bucket, I have this public warning. And there is one more feature, which is objects can be public. So the key difference between these three, that wherever we have this public tag, means whatever we are saving in this bucket it is publicly available. Anyone can access that. in the second thing, when bucket and objects are not public, it means it is just private to my account. No one can access neither this bucket nor the objects are saved in this bucket on a public channel. Third is objects can be public, which means we have made the bucket public, folder is public, but inside that folder, like whatever I'm saving, those objects are not public. Okay, so this is the key difference. And these are the three different access levels we have with S3. Another thing to notice here, that region. So here it is showing that my bucket is in which region. For example, this is in California, these so many are in Virginia, there is this bucket is in Mumbai. So now let's try to create a bucket and see exactly what things we need to provide. So as Rajat mentioned that whenever we use S3, it actually shares a global unique global namespace, which means our bucket name should be unique, not just in our account, not just in that region, but globally. So that is definitely a challenge to uniquely name your buckets. So let's say if I'm trying to create a bucket with name test, I'm sure that people might have already created this bucket name with test and I will not get it. And this is where we can choose the region. So let's stick to Northern Virginia. Here, by default, all the access control lists are disabled. There is just this setting, this checkbox, which restrict you, which make your bucket secure. By default, it is restricting all the public access. Okay. And by default, versioning is also disabled. But if you want to keep all the versions of your file, this is the place where you can enable it. So either you can enable it at the time of creation, but you can also change this setting later. Any of these settings can be altered later as well.
Right. So there's one more thing, like if you created one bucket, say my production bucket, and you want that to be accessible only by the production EC2 machines, like there are 3 production EC2 machines and only they should get an access to the S3 bucket. So you can also do that, that only those 3 machines will be able to access data, read and write data from those machines, and not even other machines will be able to write and read data. So that can be configured using IAM roles. We will discuss that tomorrow in the next session, I'll say.
Okay, yeah, and then there are few advanced settings as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you scroll up, there is a versioning tab which says disable or enable.
Mm-hmm.
My question is that, let's say if I save one file by the name of Rohit, and then on the next day I again save a file, let's say by the name of Rohit_1. I mean, will it save it as version 2 or how is it? I mean, what is the concept of this?
It will treat it as a new file altogether because you changed the file name. So if
So
you
if
are
I keep
saving,
the same...
if next day you are saving the same file rohit.txt again, then it will create a version, next version for a Rohit file.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So these are the settings. So there are like very rich features as we are consistently talking about, and Rajat just showed that Airtel link. So means there is another feature in S3 that we can host any website also here. So we can like host our website script here, let's say some index.html, and then we can use this S3 bucket to access our website. So if that is the case, because that is the use case which we want to demonstrate next. So if that is the case, like because we will need to use that URL from like public browsers. So in that case, we definitely want to disable this check that we don't want to block all the public access. So we can disable this one. Because if I'm creating bucket with this setting enabled, it will give me the access level that bucket and objects are not accessible. If I'm enabling this, then it will create a bucket where bucket will be accessible, but objects are not accessible. Okay. So let me just create and I will show you that. And here, the moment I'm just unchecking this, it will ask me to explicitly check that I'm not doing it by mistake. I need to confirm that I acknowledge that it might be vulnerable, means I'm allowing my bucket to be publicly available. So with create bucket, it has given me this error that bucket with this name is already existing. So we need to provide some unique name here. So let me say SAA demo. And what is the date today? 12th October. Okay. So I'm just trying with this name. I should get it. Yeah. So here, this bucket is created. And we can see this tag here that objects can be public. Okay. If I haven't unselected if that particular setting, then I would have got this particular setting that bucket and objects are not public. But this time the setting is that bucket is public, but objects can be public. Okay. But it depends that exactly what kind of because it might be the case that I am just making that folder available, but inside that folder I may be selective that okay, this file can be available, this file cannot be available, so I can alter settings on different files. Okay, so now let's try to see a few more things with the bucket. So whenever like bucket is there, so in objects, like this is the area where we can store any files. Let me upload few files here. So either I can simply drag drop files here, or I can just upload, browse. I'm just trying to recall where I have those files. Because as I mentioned, I want to upload index.html here. So I can use that as my web page and use this bucket to host that web page.
So Dipali, since you are uploading a file from your local laptop or desktop, does it also scans the file before uploading it? Because there could be, let's say, a virus on your machine.
No, so there is no such provision.
And there is no such need as well because it is a object storage. So the file is not going to execute or it's not going to open anywhere on the server. It will be stored, cut into chunks and stored in chunks. So there is no risk of a virus on S3. The virus will only happen like if you copied some file and then you download it on your system and you execute it, then there is a risk of the virus. But overall, it cannot impact the other files which is there on S3, and it cannot impact the S3 storage due to the viruses.
Okay, thanks.
So here I kind of browse these 3 files from my local machine and simply hitting upload.
The person you are speaking with has put your call on hold. Please stay on the line. நீங்கள் பேசும் நபர் உங்கள் அழைப்பை ஹோல்டில் வை.
Fine. So now it says that upload status. I did not notice because I got distracted with this hold message. So the moment we upload the files, it gives us like HTTP 200 message, 200 status. That means these files are successfully uploaded. And here also we can see that status. Now, if we talk about other properties and features available with S3, so let's quickly walk through this properties section. That here, this is the place where you can enable versioning. So by default, it is disabled. But if I simply add it and enable that, my bucket will be enabled for versioning, and it will store multiple versions of the same files. This is where we can provide some tags. Tags are nothing but like key value pairs, where means these are simply the labels which you can tag a bucket. Let's say you want to label it that this bucket contains my development development environment data, or this bucket contains my test server data. So maybe you can place different tabs or team names or anything. You can create different tags as per your need. This is the area where you can enable encryption. If you want to keep your data secure in your bucket, you want to encrypt that data, this is the place where you can enable it. And when you enable, you get multiple options for encryption, that with which mechanism you want to encrypt this data. So it can be like you can use the KMS service where keys will be managed by S3 itself, or another scenario where keys are managed by the customer. So you can choose relevant encryption mechanism for your bucket. So this is another security feature. Then this is the area where we can enable intelligent tiering on this bucket itself. What this intelligent tiering means, Rajat was talking about multiple storage classes, that by default, whenever we are saving any data, it is going to S3 standard. And if we are not accessing it frequently, we can move it to the other classes, which is reduced redundancy or infrequent access or Glacier. So when we enable this, means either we can configure that thing manually on different files, but this option helps us enable the setting on the bucket level itself. So let's say if I try to create this configuration here, so I can give any name, and here I can define, maybe I want to archive this data after 60 days. If it is not being used for 60 days, please move it to the Glacier. If it is not being used for 30 days, please move it to the infrequent access area. So this is the place where you can define your rules and configure it. So it will take care of it automatically. And here you can also define that, okay, if my data is not being used for, let's say, 1 year, then please delete it. So all these things can be configured in this section.
Deepali, I have a question here. When we find out when the data was last used, is this based on S3 bucket level, or is this based on object level?
Object level.
Thank you.
Okay. Then, okay, so then there are various other useful features as well. Server access logging maybe means, I think it will be too much to discuss at this stage. And then here it gives you different area where you can link your S3 bucket with other services available in the AWS ecosystem. And this transfer acceleration is the feature where you can accelerate the speed of saving data into your bucket. Let's say you have to store huge data set in S3. So this is where you can enable the transfer acceleration. So it can be copied. So by default, it will break it into multiple files behind the scenes and will enable it for parallel uploads here. So this is the transfer acceleration thing. And requester pays is another interesting feature with S3, that normally what happens, whatever data you are storing, and when people are accessing that data from your bucket, you will be charged, because whosoever is the bucket owner, that account will be charged for that data transfer. But let's try to imagine from the scenario, you are a media streaming company, something like Netflix or something. So you have hosted all your media files on S3 bucket, and your website is available for everyone to transfer movies or something. Guys, can you please go on mute? Okay. So, but you want that whenever anyone is accessing your website, whenever anyone is accessing or transferring, storing that movie from your website, you should not get charged. Rather, they should be paying it. So this is where you can enable this requester pays feature, where the consumer of that data will be paying for it, not the owner. Okay. And then another feature here is static website hosting, which we are going to see now. So if we enable this bucket to host a static website, we need to enable this setting here. And here we need to provide a landing page. In my case also, it is like index.html. So you can provide anything. And if you have any error document, you can provide here. This is optional. And with that, we can simply save changes. Any questions so far?
So Dipali, if I will also attach the S3 bucket onto a virtual machine. If I want to access,
we can do that. Yeah. If let's try to take a very typical use case that you are getting data files on daily basis, and your application logic is there on the EC2 machine. So you, whenever you are trying getting the data files, you are getting them in the S3 bucket, but processing logic is available on the EC2 machine. So your EC2 machine can read files from S3 bucket and process that, and can further save the outcome in the S3 bucket or logs or anything on the S3 bucket.
Yeah,
Though
so you
you
cannot
can
logically attach it the way like you can attach a EBS volume, but you can make it accessible. So it will not be visible like D drive or E drive, but when you run the commands or program, then you can read and write content from S3 bucket.
So the only difference that EFS offers is that it is mountable like a drive here.
Right, correct. So in the demo, I think Dipali will show the way to copy and paste data on the S3 buckets using command line. Then you can understand more.
Okay, so here we simply enabled this bucket for a website hosting, and the moment we did that, it has given us this URL. That with this URL we can access that. But still I'm getting this error 403 forbidden. The reason being because when I'm trying to make this bucket public, then I need to do few additional things in here. I need to fix it permission so it can be accessed via public channel. So if I go to permissions tab here, currently the access level is objects can be public, but I want to make my bucket public, right? Bucket and object, everything I want to make public so I can access this bucket as well as the files from this browser. So for that, I need to provide a policy here. Okay. So here in this area, I need to provide a policy statement, and that policy, again, I'll refer to my Medium blog. So if you refer the same learning-dipali /medium.com, then you can access all the blogs here.
Hi, Deepali.
Yes, please go ahead.
This bucket has been created by you, right? Then you are the owner of the bucket. Then obviously you should be able to open it, right? Is my understanding correct?
Yes, I can open it, but as of now, I'm trying it from browser, which is a public channel, HTTP 80 protocol, right?
And you already made, okay. So you made bucket as public, not object, right?
Correct. No, other way, sorry. I made objects public, not the bucket. But if I'm trying to access that file index.html, so first of all, bucket should be public and then that file should be public. Getting it?
When you made bucket, right? When you created the bucket, I mean the folder, you made it as a public and I am accepting the risk like that you mentioned. And later you upload the object, which is index.html. But still this object is
currently
not
the
public,
access
right?
level is that objects can be public. It does not say that bucket is public. Okay, I can be selective here by disabling that setting, that I can be selective that in this bucket, I can make individual files public. Let's say I have 10 files, or maybe there are only 2 files on which I want to give public access. So that is something I can achieve with that setting. But if I want to make everything public, bucket as well as all the objects in this bucket, then yes, I need to do this additional step.
Okay.
Okay. So here, public Yeah, so here, this is the story which we have this static website, public bucket policy. So if I simply copy this, this is the JSON format, and this is how like IAM policies typically being written in AWS. And I'll just explain what this policy is doing. So I'm just adding this additional policy statement with my bucket. It is the bucket level policy. So what it is doing, this version is something which is the version when this particular policy was launched, okay? Launched or updated. So this is the version. Now, this is the area for us to focus on. So what we are doing, this SID is nothing. We are just giving any name that we are adding permissions. So it can be any string. There can be two kind of effect, allow or deny. So you can add policies to allow access on your bucket or on individual objects, or you can write a deny policy as well. So let's say my bucket is by default, it is publicly like accessible, but I want to place a deny permission on few of the objects. Then I can write a explicit deny policy. Principal means whom I want to give access. So I have mentioned asterisk here means everyone, means allow everyone. What we are allowing, S3 get object. Get object means read access. Put object means write access. So we are allowing everyone to read object from S3 bucket. And which bucket? This is the bucket name. This is the place where I need to define the bucket name. In my case, bucket name is this one. So I need to update it here. Okay. So inside this bucket and then slash asterisk inside this bucket on each and every object, each and every file, I'm allowing everyone read access. So this is what this policy means. If I save changes here, now it has given me this warning, this tag that now this bucket is publicly accessible. Okay, and now you can see the access level has also changed. It is now public. So at this stage, if I try to access my website, I should be able to access the index.html. So this is something which is coming from the index.html, that this is the web page script which we have saved there. Any questions on this? Because this is something which you guys need to practice as your assignment and share the links. So after you've done this, like you need to share these links with us so we can see that exactly how creative you are and how you are successfully hosted your web page on S3.
Deepali, in public, in that policy, you mentioned that principal you have assigned is as asterisk because we have to give permission to all users, right?
Yes.
So suppose if we want to give permission to only 3 users, then that is the place where we need to change.
Yes. So here you will need to write those usernames, and those usernames will be like AWS usernames or their account numbers.
So those are IAM users, right?
Correct.
So that will be there. Here we will have to mention the ID of the users or the usernames.
I think the correct syntax would be account ID /username.
Okay.
Yeah, so only those users will be able to update details on this bucket, but still this bucket will be available publicly. Like
no
once
update, sorry, because we are just allowing the get object.
Yes,
so
yeah.
Only those users will be able to read it.
Okay. I think I missed that. Yeah, get object.
Yeah, if I add another action here that okay as 3 put object as well, then yes, those user can read and write. Okay, so now at this stage means if I share this link in the chat box, so each one of you can really access this. So this is what do we mean by principal asterisk, that anyone can access it. But if I restrict to a specific user, then yes, only those users will be able to access this one. So as I mentioned, Yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry, Dipali. Yeah. While S3 provide the functionality for website, does that also provide functionality to secure the website? I can see the link is saying not secure. Does those functionality also available on S3?
Yeah, like in order to really secure your data within the S3, we have seen multiple features that there are different access level. We can enable encryption and those things. But in order to make it secure, means as of now it is using HTTP. If we want to make it like HTTPS, we need to enable SSL here. Then yes, we need to add that certificate, and CloudFront is the service in AWS which helps us do that on top of this.
Thank you, Dipali.
All right, thanks, Rupesh. So yes, I was adding like now this is the assignment for you guys that please explore S3, create some web page. Like this template, it's something I have not like created by my own. I simply Googled for some available templates. Or if you want, you can write your custom HTML script. Or if you are like proficient in JavaScripts and all, maybe you can create fancy pages. So it's up to you. It can be simple one-liner thing, the way we created with EC2, a simple one-liner script that this is my first EC2 machine. So any sort of script would work here. So please try to host it as a a static website on S3. Share this link with us so we can validate. And on the same time, post these links on the LinkedIn as well. Since you are learning something, I think it is time to tell to the world that, okay, I'm learning some new things. I'm like getting better. I'm improving on my skills. So this is time to tell the world as well. So please share those links on LinkedIn. Create your post, because nowadays like branding matters. So you need to take charge of your personal branding. And LinkedIn is a very good place to do that branding. So don't keep it to yourself. Let the world know that this is what you are learning nowadays, and tag us there so we can really validate your links. And definitely like that gives us the sense of achievement that yes, whatever efforts we are putting in, that is really helping people to learn something new. Okay. I know many of you at this stage might not be really liking this idea that I should be putting it on LinkedIn, but trust me, start it if you're not very active on LinkedIn, and you will enjoy your learnings, and let the people have that FOMO feeling that they are missing something. Okay. And today I have created this post on LinkedIn. So maybe what we will expect from you guys. So I'm just giving this link so you can get, so you don't really need to search for us on LinkedIn. So you will get our coordinates, and just share your feedback as well. If you are getting something useful, if you're learning something new out of these sessions, so please share your feedback. Share your responses and feedbacks, comments here, and create your own post as well, where you are just posting link with your load balancers or with websites or whatever like concepts we will be learning in near future.
So I have also posted one link in the chat, which is like how to set up a secure connection from EC2 to S3 buckets. So you can also follow that link and set up the connectivity between your EC2 machine and S3 buckets at a secure level so that others cannot access that. A very easy guide, just I think hardly 5 or 6 minutes it will take, and you can set up this connectivity.
Yeah. Or maybe today, if you're not feeling that courageous that you can explore this thing, definitely you will feel that confidence after next session, because there we will be covering IAM role and everything. But yes, try to explore. The more you explore, more learnings will be there, needless to say.
And keep watching our space on Medium as well. We will be keep on posting tutorials and other stuff related to AWS cloud, so you can get lots of solution there.
Yeah, and as part of this community, we keep on doing lots of things. We keep on posting blogs, we keep on hosting multiple events. So you can follow us on LinkedIn as well as on Medium. So you get updates. And if you find that relevant, you can join us. Okay, back to the real content. Where is my AWS page link? I don't know. When I'm sharing this thing over Zoom, I'm not getting the bar, this one. Okay. So yes, as a next step, Rajat, what is there in the agenda? What else we want to cover?
We want to discuss the elastic file storage, and the next one is for the shared security model.
Okay.
Maybe
So
we can showcase the demo of CLI as well. So let's break out for a quick break. It's being a long running, we are continuously speaking. So let's take a break for a few minutes, like 15 minutes, then resume back and we can cover the rest of the things.
Sure. So I think, yes, we are done till this point. Now we will try to see how we can use S3 using command lines. So we will see that in a while, and then we will talk about other storage services available in AWS. Fine. So it is almost 11. Let's try to be back at 11:15, and then we will resume. I hope it's okay with everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Please be on time because yes, we have a lot to cover.
माँ 15 मिनट मिले हैं ले आऊं दूध 15 मिनट का दूध ले आऊं
Hi Dipali, I'm back now.
Hi Rajat, I'm also there. Maybe whosoever is available, please raise your hands so we are aware how many of you are there.
I think I remember Rupesh joined one of the last session. Rupesh, which session you joined? Cloud Practitioner or Solution Architect?
So I joined last session on Monday, but I also met you on EEP, Rajat.
Yeah, EEP. Okay, remember now. Yeah, I remember like I saw you somewhere in the earlier training. Thank you.
Thanks for noticing me.
I also noticed Saranya. So is it the same Saranya, which is our EP fellow?
I think Saranya Abinya is different.
Okay.
But there is another Saranya D. I'm not
Mhm.
sure.
Okay. So Rupesh, like considering you are in UK, it is like very early for you to join these sessions.
Well, I take it positively because it is well suited to me just before my work start. This session will end. So from that perspective, it is good, but it's true, 4:30 in the morning.
And how's the weather? It's too cold, I heard. In UK.
It's getting a bit colder, but we
Okay.
are hoping on Diwali it will stay mild.
Okay. Great.
All right. So I think it is already 2 minutes over. So in interest of time, let's get started anyway. So as
So
promised.
any query, any question before we start again?
On S3, I had a thought. Are we going to have a demo to use S3 through some explorer or kind of a bucket observer or something?
Yeah, so I think we'll be giving a demo using CLI. So there are some third-party explorers are available similar to File Explorer. So you can download that and you need to configure your AWS credentials in that, and then it will give you a window like of FTP window like WinSCP where you can just drag and drop tools from your local desktop to S3. But most of the time, I'll say in real world, it is connectivity between program or your S3. You will not process those files manually. You will write some Java program, Python programs to create PDF file, then dump it onto S3 bucket, or read data from XML files which are dumped onto S3 buckets, read them, process the data, then update the data back on XML. So these are the standard use cases that you will see.
Yeah, and another very popular use case when you use your S3 as your data lake, when you are storing all your data in S3 bucket, and maybe for some interactive analysis, you are trying to query that data using tools like Athena. So that can be there. Maybe I can
Yeah.
show you that after the
And
CLI thing.
nowadays, many public websites are also hosted on S3. Maybe Dipali, if you can share your screen, then you can open agilemarkets.com.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this is a agilemarkets.com platform created by NetWest, and you can see like it is hosted on S3 bucket, and It is using the CloudFront for the content distribution network for the faster access, and later on it internally connects to the NetWest microservices over the secure connectivity. So it is available for all the customers and the brokers. Majorly it's a brokers platform. NetWest brokers get login, they open this URL and then they do trading on this platform. So many professional websites are also available and hosted on S3 in the same way Dipali showed a demo for her website. So it's very popular nowadays, especially for the single page applications like applications you have for which is based on AngularJS platforms or React.js. So I remember, like, if you open OnePlus.com, it is a OnePlus mobile phone company, and I was reading somewhere like they have also hosted their website on AWS S3 buckets. So it's serving directly from S3. So many professional websites are now following this route. So they use a combination of sorry, CloudFront service to make the high availability of the application and keeping them caching on the edge servers, edge locations for the faster access. And then they're also using the Route 53 service. So there's a Route 53 service which can map domain name, which is like oneplus.in is the domain name, which is mapping to your bucket and CloudFront distribution. The same was the case with the agile markets. Route 53 service is used to map the domain name, and it look like a public website for the customers.
Sorry, I'm going a bit off topic. Could we create the load balancer using S3 buckets?
No required, definitely not required. It is a fully managed service by Amazon. They will manage everything on the backend, and you will never face the performance issues with the fully managed services. So that is what the purpose is. You don't have to do load balancing. You don't have to do any other stuff. Just focus on your code and use the fully managed service. Rest everything will be managed by them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rajat, Shamal here. Is there any size limit on the bucket?
No size limit on the bucket, but yeah, per object, there is a size limit of a 5 terabyte. One file cannot go beyond 5 terabyte size, which is again huge size, I will say. But yeah, there is no end limit on the bucket size. You can keep anything in the bucket.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, it is listed here as well that files can be anywhere from 0 bytes to 5 terabytes. Okay, and if you have like files larger than 5 terabytes, there is a way that you can like break those files and use them, like load them as multiple files. So normally, exceptional scenarios, this is how people handle that. Okay, so as a next step, just to give you some programming flavor, that what if you need to connect to your data files, log files, or whatever data you have stored in S3 with your local machine or with the EC2 machine, and need to use those files for some processing purpose. Okay, so let me take a use case where I'm trying to access these files from my local machine, which is local laptop, and then I'm trying to I'm trying to read the files which are there in my S3 bucket. So for that, we will need a programmatic access. And I'm just taking another step here, just as a good practices, that I'm just going to IAM, which is Identity and Access Management, though we will be covering it in bit detail in the next session. But I would like to create a new user here, so I can expose those credentials when I'm sharing my screen and can delete the user later. Because it is never a good idea to share your credentials for root user. Okay, so I'm in the IAM. Here I'm just creating a user, though I have many existing users as well. But okay, let me create one user. Let me call it demo user. Then when you create a user, it asks you that exactly what kind of access you want to give this to user. So you want to give it programmatic access. For programmatic access, users will need access key and secret key. So if you have these two keys, only then you can connect to your AWS account in a programmatic way. When you are using like CLIs, or you are trying to access some APIs, or you are using any SDKs. Or if you just want to give user your console access, this management console, the front end, so you can give this access. In this case, let me give programmatic access, or maybe I can go for both. Then it asks for a password. We can create a custom password also. Let me call it welcome, or maybe welcome one. Okay, so this is the password I'm creating with this user, and I'm just unchecking that my user really need not to reset its password. So next, if I go to permissions, okay, I'm not adding any permissions at this stage, but yes, I think we will demo that use case in the next session when we will access, when we will cover these IAM things in detail. As of now, let me give my user the full access, administrator access. I can add any tags, but these are optional. So I'm just creating this user. So when we create our user, since we have given it like programmatic access, so it is giving us this access ID and secret key ID. Okay. So I'll be using these details when I'll try to connect my local machine with AWS. So let me go to command prompt here. Let's say the use case which we are trying, what that here in C drive, let me create a folder where I will try to copy the file, means either I will try to copy the files which are available in my local machine to my S3 bucket, or whatever is in my S3 bucket, I want to copy it at my local machine. So vice versa. So we want to sync, let's say the use case is whenever any data file is coming to your S3 bucket, we are replicating that file on our local machine where we have some logic written, so it can be processed and it don't need any manual intervention. Okay. So something is wrong with the right click. Let me call it test data. So in C drive, I have created this folder test data. Now on command prompt, let me go to this folder. Now here, when I'm at this location, I want to connect to AWS. So how can we do that? And let me show you those steps here as well, that these steps are available on another Medium blog where S3 sync commands. Okay. So later, like you can see these things from here. Okay. So what I'm doing, okay, yeah, good thing it reminded me that when we are trying to access the CLI from CLI is like command line interface from a local machine or from EC2, make sure that you have AWS CLI installed. Okay. On my machine, it is like pre-installed. And I can simply check it using, let's say, if I'm trying to, that how to ensure that CLI is there. So AWS S3 LS. So with this command, I'm simply trying to see if it can connect to AWS. So the syntax is, first of all, you need to say AWS, then the service name, and then the Linux sort of commands. Not sure why it is taking so long. So yes, it is like CLI is definitely there, and like without any additional setting, it let me access the S3 bucket also. But if you need to configure it for the first time, there is a command AWS configure. So if you hit this command, it will ask you to provide your access key ID and then secret key ID. And then it will ask for the default region and the output format. So these things are optional, but yes, access key ID and secret key ID you need to provide when you do AWS configure, then it can talk to your AWS account. Okay. So now means when we have
So in
tested.
the same way, they also provide a library for Java, .NET, Python. So if you use their library, in the same way, you can access the files and the buckets using the programming as well, coding as well.
Yeah, so either I can use like any commands, and since in this particular use case which I talked about, that I'm simply trying to sync the objects which are available in my S3 bucket to my local drive. Okay, so for that there is with S3 there is a specific utility which called S3 sync. So syntax would be AWS S3 sync. Uh, Okay, I think, okay, before that syncing, let me explain other things as well. But okay, if we can go either way. So AWS S3 sync, and what I want to sync, S3 bucket. So it format should be S3 / and then your bucket name. And if I try to see my bucket name, it is this one, SA demo 1210. I think I messed up with the command, looks like.
I think after space, you need to enter dot as well so that it will copy in the root folder at the end of the command.
Okay, yeah, definitely. AWS S3 sync. So this is the command that AWS S3 is the service, then sync is the utility I'm using, then source and target. So what is my source here? Source is my S3 bucket. So that S3 and then this thing, and then what is the target? Target is my current directory. So it has shown that it has downloaded these files to my current directory, and we can simply validate either by doing dir there, or we can check it in here. Similarly, let's say if I'm creating any file here, maybe I'm calling it just test. So if we have some data at our local machine which we want to copy to S3, then we can use the same command but with altered source and target. That is AWS S3 sync. And then what is the source this time? Source is my current directory and target is going to be my S3 bucket. So this time it will sync my local machine to that S3 bucket, and in S3 we can simply go there and validate that, though we can list our files at the command prompt as well. I don't see that additional file here.
Refresh bucket.
Yeah. So here you go. Now we can see this test.txt. So this is how you can copy files between your S3 folder and your machine. Now, if we follow
here on the right hand side in the table, you can see like storage class. So here you can see like this file is in which level of storage class. So like if you don't access it for 2 or 3 months, then you can see a different class will be attached to the files by default by the Glacier.
Yeah. And let's say in the real world, sorry, please go ahead.
That is an automatic process, or do we have to make any changes in order for this to be moved from standard to, let's say, another option?
Yeah, so whenever you create new files, definitely it's going to be created in a standard. But yes, using the intelligent tiering option here, which was available in properties, you can configure that, okay, that my file, if my file is not accessed for 30 days, please move it to the infrequent access. or if my file is not used for 60 days, please move it to the Glacier. So those kind of things you can configure in intelligent tiering section here, which was somewhere
can
here.
we change this setting at the bucket level after creating the bucket?
Yes, we can. So as of now, intelligent tiering was disabled. Here it is. So as of now, it was disabled, but I can create, means I don't have any configuration. I can create a configuration and so it will be like enabled now onwards. Or I can create this configuration on any of my historic buckets as well. Okay, so yes, I was adding this. Let's say in a real world scenario, what happens when you are working in like large organizations, so you normally don't get access on the console. You normally need to access all these services. You need to do everything via command line itself. So here, these are the commands with which like you can create, means we have seen that how to create bucket from the console, and with these commands we can even create this bucket from the command line. So commands are very simple. As I mentioned, first of all you need to prefix it with AWS and then service name. MB is the command for make bucket, means we are creating bucket, and which bucket we are creating, whatever name we are providing here. We can try that. So AWS S3 MB, and let me call it this time test 1210. Let's try if we get this name. No. So it says that bucket namespace is shared. We don't have this name available. So let me try to add something in. I'm saying SA demo V2 1210. Some weird names. Sorry, I copied the wrong command. My bad. I copied the sync command to create bucket, and I don't have any bucket with this name. Let me type it. So AWS S3 make bucket and then S3, and this name I can definitely copy from here. So now this time it has created the bucket, and we can validate it by listing bucket one more time. So AWS S3 LS. So here we can see this V2 bucket is now created. So this is how you can like do all the operations which we can do from console, from command line as well. And these are the very simple operations listed here, that you can create a bucket, you can list objects in that bucket, you can delete a bucket with remove bucket, that is RB command. Sync we have already seen. So sync like source and target. Here we are syncing from local to S3. Here we are syncing from S3 to local. So these things you guys can try out and create a like real use case. Let's say like you have your data files in S3 and you are trying to process those files with some logic written on your EC2 machine. So your application logic is there on EC2, but data is there, and then you are saving logs again on the S3 again, or maybe you are saving the process data on the S3 bucket again. So you can try such simple use cases. Any questions till this point?
Yeah. Hey, Dipali, I missed the part where in CLI you map that user which you created to this.
Actually, I did not do that explicitly because I was already logged in. But yes, I can do that if we are using this AWS configure command. Okay. So here it was by default logged in with some previous user which I have created, but here I can use my new user credentials actually. So access key ID of my new user. I have pasted it twice. And then secret key for this user. And then I'm using default region in this. So this time it is connected with this newly created user. So if I try to use the similar commands like AWS S3 LS, so I'm connecting with this user, and earlier I was connected with some other user, which I am not sure that which user was connected.
So this method is fine for the temporary purpose, like when you're doing development or when you're exploring the things, but this is not a recommended method for the production scenario because say if you have 10 servers where you have kept this credential and you somehow change your credential, then you have to go on 10 servers and make these changes again on those servers. Otherwise, they will not be able to connect. So the right way is to keep these credentials somewhere in the source code repository so that whenever Java or Python program runs, it loads these credentials and then run it. Or the other way is using an IAM role, the AWS IAM access management, so that EC2 machines can connect to the S3 bucket. So the link which I shared earlier in the chat it's related to that scenario. Like you don't have to configure any credentials in the machines, and you will just set up the IAM roles so that the machines and S3 bucket can talk to each other without hard coding credentials there. It will run basis on the IAM roles, and when you revoke the roles, all those machines will not be able to connect to the S3 bucket. So it's a centralized way to manage access to the resources.
I hope that clarifies.
Dipali, I think I have missed something. Like I want to understand how both the user IDs are able to access all the details of this bucket.
So when we are doing this AWS configure thing, that is the time where we can connect our AWS account with desired user. So whatever user credentials we have, so we recently created this user. So recently I tried to connect with this user, but in past I have connected to this CLI with some other user. So it was already connecting to that. So that's
I
how
think it was your root account, Dipali, earlier.
Not sure because
Okay.
you keep on trying multiple times. Does that answer your question or?
Yes, Dipali.
Okay. Great. So
How
now,
do we access the same bucket from EC2 machine?
yes, we can.
I mean, how do we do that? We need to go to the virtual machine and then probably open up command prompt and do the same stuff.
Exactly. So that is one way, and then another way is using IAM roles, which we will be discussing in the next session. That we can create role, we can give that role the required accesses. Then we really need not to provide this access key and secret key stuff.
And okay, got it. And I mean, can we have a? I mean, I mean, usually what happens is that whenever I want to have an access on a Windows machine, I will typically create a logon script so that once the user logs on, he will get an access to that specific drive. The same is the case here, that once I log into an EC2 instance, I will get an access at the time of login.
Yeah, best practice is to define your granular permission, that exactly what all actions you want to do in IAM roles, and attach that role with your EC2 instance that you can do at the time of creation or even later, and you are sorted.
Okay.
I think it will be more clear when you will see these things in action. So just wait for a few days.
Okay. And will I see a shared drive on my EC2 instance, similar to how I see on a Windows machine, or is it something else?
Yes, if you have used EFS, which is Elastic File Service, which is a service to have a shared storage area for all your Linux instances, then yes. If you have not configured EFS, then you won't be able to see the shared one.
So S3 will not be visible as a separate file storage. It is a remote storage that you can access over HTTP. So whenever you are running these CLIs, these are even making a HTTP calls to the S3 buckets.
Okay, got it.
Okay, now since we are discussing S3 and Rupesh already talked about that how we can access this data and all. So let me quickly try to show another use case here that let's say we have saved some data file in our S3 bucket and we need to query that data. So though like that is a like different concept, means the way we use for the analyst and data scientists use for analysis purposes. But yes, I think good to give you that flavor as well. So in this bucket, let's try to load some CSV files. Or maybe I might be having something already. Let me check that. Lake formation demo. Yes, here I have some CSV file available. So this is another bucket where I have some folder structure created. The way I have organized this bucket is that in this bucket, I have created this folder raw data where I will be, I'm trying to store all the raw data, all the incoming data. And then I have like two different folders here. Here I want to store all the batch data, and in other folder I want to store the real-time data. But we are not going into that complicacy as of now. We are just looking at this batch data where I have already stored a CSV file. Okay. So now we want to query this file. How we can query this file? Let's see. So there is a service which is known as Glue. So Glue is the service which lets us create metadata for our data which is stored in S3. When I say metadata, means it actually create tables and those kind of database structure in our for our data file. So here I'm into the Glue, and crawler is the service here inside Glue, which actually crawls the data. Crawls means it actually scans the data which is available in your S3 bucket, and when it scans the data, it creates a schema for that data file. So if I try to create a new crawler here as a demo crawler, and just everything I'm just keeping default, then it asks for a data source, that exactly which data you want to crawl. So here, let's sync our S3 bucket. So data source is S3, and here I can define my S3 path. So which is the S3 bucket? I myself missed. Which was it? DLF demo actually. So it is not available on page 1. Here it is. So in DLF demo, inside raw data, I'm just picking that specific file, okay, that I want to crawl. I want to scan this particular file. Okay, maybe not the file level. Actually, I need to go until the folder level. So I need to pick the folder that inside this folder, I want to crawl everything. And here, like it is already, whenever I'm choosing any folder, so it we can choose some setting here that I want to crawl all the subfolders inside this, or I just want to crawl this particular folder. So we can do those configurations here. Okay, the moment I added this data source, it asks us to create a role. So let us create a new role here. New, I'm saying demo SA role. So we need to create this role so it can actually read data from S3 bucket. For this database, like since I have this existing database is nothing here. It is just a folder. It is just a container where it will place all the files. It is not like traditional RDBMS databases. So either I can choose this database, or let me create a new one so you guys don't have any confusion. So when we create a database, demo SADB, I'm simply just defining a logical location here, okay, that dump everything into this database. Going back to my this page, refresh this so you can see the newly created database. Then rest everything you can keep default. Here you see the crawler schedule, that exactly when you want to scan this data. So let's say if we have our use case that our data comes in every 8 p.m. So maybe you can create that schedule. Okay. Here you can define your cron schedule, or you can simply make it to crawl hourly basis, daily basis, weekly basis, like that. But in our case, let's keep it on demand, because whenever we want, we just want to crawl that data on ad hoc basis. With all these settings, I'm just creating this crawler. So this crawler is now created. So as of now, we have just created this crawler. Now, when we run this, it will actually start scanning that data, which is there in the S3 bucket. This step takes around 1 to 2 minutes, basis that how much data is available in our S3 bucket. Since we have just one file, so I think it should be taking around 1 minute. Since we have only one file available in this folder, so we expect to see, so here it shows us that exactly what is the outcome of this crawler. So we should see that one table created, like this one. So you should just know, means from the solution architect perspective, you should just know that what all these services, what is the purpose to use these services, but you will not be really seeing detailed question around Glue and Athena. So these are the database specialty, data analytics specialty level, certification level concepts.
Yeah, so whenever you prepare for the exam, so read introduction about all the services, like what are their basic use cases, why these services are there, so that in case you get a question, you can even follow the approach of negative answers, like you can negate the invalid answers for the thing. So sometimes you can expect a questions out of the blue moon as well, because there is no fixed course, but the services that we're discussing on high level, those are the major focus. But yeah, it's not limited, they can put any question as well. And sometimes they put the questions around the newly launched services as well. So whenever you prepare, look into the last 3 months or 4 months. If some new services launched by AWS, then you can expect a question around that service in the exam.
Yeah, so it is still in stopping state. So best way to know about
of this service.
I'm sorry, say again.
What is the significance of this crawler service?
Significance is like you are getting lots of data in your S3 bucket, and you are trying to access that data. So like we will query this data as a database table. Somehow
So
it
say
has
you are
failed.
getting a huge size file, XML or CSV, 1 GB, 2 GB file, and you want to perform some query. So what are the ways? Like you need to open those files, download those files, scan with some code, and then you can do this. So that job is being done by the crawler service. It will scan those files, the data in those files, and then it will allow you an interface to run the queries on those files. Like if you want to find username with Rajat in that file, it will give you that kind of a interface and data from those CSV file. So you can put any CSV file and then you can query that data easily using this tool.
And does it allow us to format the data as well?
Format as in?
So like we are getting the data in a raw form, uh, any other format, and if you want it to in a database, in a table in a different format, let's say in a different fields.
Yeah, so Glue is the service here which helps us change the format. So inside Glue, what we do, we can create jobs where we can convert that. Okay, if I'm getting data in CSV, but I want to save this data as a Parquet or maybe JSON.
Yeah.
So with Glue jobs, we can create that conversion.
And that jobs are already available for the formatting, or we have to create a job as well for the same?
We have to create explicitly.
Okay.
That
So
my
for
incoming data is in CSV, but after I'm done, I want to save it as a Parquet. So I have to create a job for that.
And those options are already there. We don't need to have any kind of coding experience.
No coding, nothing. It's just like simple configuration, the way we are seeing till now.
Yeah, you need to specify some kind of a mapping, like define the mapping in the configuration, but yeah, no coding required.
And do we have the email functionality, like if the data is when the data has come and we have put a schedule to scan it and move it into database in a specific format, and I want it to be mailed to specific participants or people?
Yes. Yeah, you can do that. You can configure. SNS is the service. Its full name is Simple Notification Service, where you can configure the moment I get new file in S3 bucket, I should be notified on email or over SMS, anything. So you can configure it there.
Yeah, so if you want to define a complete workflow, you can use combination of different services like Lambda and then notification service, even event bridges there. So you can define combinations, a complete workflow using different services. So as soon as a new file is published on S3 bucket, so data will be scanned by Glue, a Lambda will be triggered, which will generate a notification. It will also tell some actions based on the completion of the data calling and etc. So you need to define a complete workflow. So we will discuss some of the use cases tomorrow when we discuss Lambda. So not tomorrow, like the next date. Whenever we do session, I have a habit of saying tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much.
So here, as we see that our crawler is failed, it could not create this table and it got access denied exception. So maybe in my role, I don't have the correct privileges. So let me close this. So I'm just trying to check that role. What is missing?
So can we only query a file present on S3 bucket, or can we also query a file which is available on EC2 bucket?
With Glue, we can query files available in S3 only.
Okay.
And then, sorry, I'm asking again the same kind of question in continuation to that. Suppose if I have created a workflow and then I want the data to be emailed to my client, say some VP level of person in a format, and I want that the correct data has to be mailed, no exception, no error, or no bad data. Do we have that option in crawler services where we can ask it to, though it is scanning it, by scanning it means it is also reviewing the data the way it should be, and it will remove all those exception errors and those bad data, and then will give us that bad data in a separate format or file, that this is the data not correct received, you need to get it corrected, like that.
Something will not happen by default, but yes, again, you can leverage Glue jobs for this, that you can like create a separate file for the bad data. And then like you can attach one Lambda function, which is a like serverless service here. And in that Lambda, you can call SNS. So you can link it with SNS so it can notify to people. So you actually need to link few more services for this use case.
But it's doable.
Yeah, it is doable.
Thanks.
And I think almost everything is doable when we try to think from different use case perspective.
Yeah.
Though it might be difficult, but yes, I think looks like almost everything is possible nowadays. Okay, so in role, I am trying to see that here by default, it has created this policy It might be the restricted policy that it is giving on this particular folder. I'm not sure exactly what is missing. So safer side means I just don't want to spend a lot of time in debugging. So let me try to add some more permissions here. So what I can do, maybe I can simply add admin privileges. So that is not a good practice always. Come on, I'm not getting, okay, database administrator access. I'm simply adding this particular policy here with my role. But now we will need to run our crawler again, which will again take at least a minute's time. Okay, it's here only. I'm looking in actions. So basically what we are trying, that whatever data is available in S3, the CSV file, we are trying to create a table structure with the help of this glue crawler. So we can like query it like normal tables using another service here, Athena. So this is the use case which we are trying. But yes, meanwhile, happy to take any more questions.
Dipali, since you've been, sorry to ask this weird question. You have
no worries, go ahead. If like I don't have proper
then,
answer, I will just simply deny.
No, I mean, you have been, into AWS for us for quite some time. You know each and everything like Athena and everything. For us, as a beginner, I know it will take time, but
I understand, and that's what I was just trying to show. But yes, we kind of digressed. So this is the best place to really know about various services available. Just go to services and look for each and every category. That in analytics section, what all services are available. Athena, what it does, it is to query data in S3 using SQL. What is cloud search? So this is the best way to build some understanding on various services available in this AWS ecosystem. So this like few words definition, and you will need to really do this exercise multiple times so you understand what is the purpose. Just means half liner definition for each service, that exactly what is the purpose of this service.
And that is even the intent of an from a solution architect. Like he should be a person who can recommend the right service for the correct use case. Like you may have multiple services which are doing the similar job, but there is a differences in their actual use cases where exactly they should be used for the better performance and better designing your architecture. So that is what the expectation is. Like when you guys become the solution architect on AWS, you should be able to guide your teams to use the right services for their specific use cases.
Yeah, and it is recommended for all the exams, like even cloud practitioner, that you should be knowing that what is the purpose of each service, though that service uh, might not be a candidate for that specific exam. For example, in cloud search, like it is not a service which is like specifically asked in any exam. But yes, you can get this name in different scenarios, or you can get this cloud search as an option for your question. Okay, so I mean it will help you to filter the options if you know that what is the purpose of this service.
Thanks, makes sense.
And one more thing is like sometimes they put a tricky question like which of these is not a valid service in AWS ecosystem. So if you know the valid service name, it will be easy for you to answer. So especially for practitioner exam, they put these questions like which of these is not a valid AWS service, like AWS Cloud Search, AWS Crawler, AWS Glue, or maybe AWS Walker. They put option as AWS Walker, which is not a right service. So it's good if you know all one liner about all services.
Let's see this time what is the outcome of this crawler. It should be fine, but I'm not sure what is missing.
I have one question. So, for example, I'm coming from Azure background. So we have similar to S3 like blob storage, and
Correct, yeah.
then we have this storage explorer, which is a tool which we can install on Windows and can see everything and query that. So, is there any similar tool to help look into data without programming or CLI?
Not really. No such thing available in AWS. Unfortunately, my crawler failed again. I'm not sure what is missing. So, though maybe we can dive deep into the logs and see what is missing. But let's
Yeah,
not spend too much time on this now.
right. We can
Maybe
move
in the
on.
next session, I
Yeah.
can show you. I will check it
Maybe
offline.
they can also try offline after the session. So I just shared one link, S3 browser. So like
Yeah.
AWS does not provide any default IDs or Explorer for S3 storage, but yeah, there are external tools that you can use. So S3 browser
Okay.
is one of them that you can use and you can try that.
Sorry, I got the like mistake here. So actually, this specific bucket I have created, I have linked it with the lake formation. So as you see, the bucket name was DLF demo, data lake formation demo. So since this bucket is being used as lake formation, that's how means I need to give it lake formation privileges. But I think we can use any other bucket. Let's not mess up with that. So if I try to do the same exercise in the bucket which we have created, if I simply upload that CSV file, create this glue crawler, it should work. Okay. So maybe you guys please try this out. Otherwise, I'll show you in the next session.
So one more thing to add here, if you can see on the same screen, so
Mhm.
you can see like these are the logs which we are getting. So there are two services, which is CloudTrail and AWS CloudWatch. So those are the services which generate these kind of loggings and give you this view, which is interface to search, clear the logs you can see in last 1 hour, 12 hour. So these are the CloudWatch and CloudTrail services, which gives you this feature uh, to do the logging on and capture the logging on AWS.
What will be the difference between CloudTrail and CloudWatch here?
Dipali, do you know the exact difference? I think CloudTrail is to capture logs from multiple sources and then put it into CloudWatch. I think view via CloudWatch. So CloudTrail is generally like capturing the data and putting onto CloudWatch service. And CloudWatch is an interface which shows that data at a consolidated view.
Yeah. So with CloudTrail, you can actually capture each and every activity happening in your account. Okay. So that is that kind of guard. That is the scanner where you will get all the API calls, everything. That from where, let's say, we have created this bucket in this region, but anyone is trying to access that bucket. So you will get all that information that who is trying to access this from where. But in CloudWatch, you only have the service logs that when we are running, we are getting this error or like whatever we configure to be stored in CloudWatch.
So we have to explicitly configure CloudWatch and CloudTrail in our
For few
application, right?
services, yes. And for few service, it is like by default, it is there.
So
But
again, like for S3, we showed like by default it is enabled, but you can enhance the level of logging and enhance the level of detail you need in the logs.
and when we talk about Cloud Watch, there is another feature. So I'm on that screen only. So there is another feature of log insights. So means this help us create detailed level logs for a deeper analysis. So let's say you want to capture all the logs which you want to analyze later with some tools. Maybe if we talk about third party tool like Splunk, so we can do that log analysis using Splunk, or maybe we can pass these logs onto some data warehouse like Redshift here in AWS. So we can just further analyze these logs using these services. But yes, it is the service which will give us like detailed level logging. But otherwise, you just have the high level logging.
Okay.
Okay, so Rajat, what next we want to cover? Shall I go back on the slides?
Yeah, we have the next slide should be for the EFS. I think there are a few details on the EFS. We have already discussed like it is another way to do a shared
Oh,
storage
I did
across.
shift F5. Sorry, my bad.
No worries. So EFS is one of the. Can you go back to the previous slide? Elastic file system for file storage, where you can use where you can create a network file location, and then you can share it with the multiple virtual machines. So that can be done. And so yeah, you can use it. So the different type of services we discussed, like for the storages, especially a remote service, a local service, and this is the file storage service. So in the next slide, we have given the steps for the demo, so you can try out that when you get time. So how to create a storage, how to mount that, how you can do that within an VPC if you want to do it securely for a specific subnet, and how you can share those with other machines. So these are steps that you can follow, and you can link all those things.
Yeah, we are not planning to cover this demo because like it is not really required even from the solution architect associate level of exam. So you should just be knowing at high level that what is the purpose of EFS, how it is being used. But yes, if you are interested to explore it further, there are the lab step, and detailed lab steps are available on the Medium blog also. So if you want, you can follow that. So here somewhere.
Will you be sharing these slides? Because we did not get the last presentation slides.
Don't say like that. I have shared them.
So those are already uploaded on the meetup. You can
On the meetup
download from there.
also I have shared the link, and I explicitly emailed to all the participants of session 1. So here I am on meetup, and this is the meetup page for the first session, and in the comments I have updated these links here. Okay, but you must have received it as an email as well.
Okay, I did not receive any email. I'm not really sure about others.
So have you logged on to, means have you, I think you must have registered on this meetup, and you must have joined this particular event. You must have subscribed that.
Yeah, I will go ahead and check on the meetup.
Okay. Otherwise, let me quickly ping these links in the chat so you can
and people who did not attend first session, I mean, I'm attending this today, second session onward. Can I also see the links in the first session? I mean, they're in the meetup.
I think you should be able to see, yeah. If you check on the past events and just look for this event on 10th December, 10th October, then yes, you should be able to access. Okay. Otherwise, like I have pasted links here as well. And what I will do, like for the next sessions as well, I'll update all the links in the subsequent sessions. So you can see the latest as well as past. Okay, I hope that should be able to sort that slides issue.
Yeah.
So yes, I was showing on that Medium blog that there is a detailed lab available for EFS, that how you can configure EFS and you can mount it to multiple, showing that it has found one instance, but where is that? These Zoom menus keep on.
I think there's a spelling
okay.
issue.
Yeah. So here, if you follow this particular blog, you will see the detailed steps that how to create EFS and then how to mount it to multiple EC2 instances. Okay. So I think it should be easy to follow.
So you may see like this guide might be outdated sometime because AWS keep on changing the screens at their end. So maybe if we might have created these slides 3, 4, 6 months before, then there might be slight changes, but not a major changes. So if there would be any major changes, we'll update the blogs again.
Yeah, and let us know if you
Yeah, if
encounter
you find
any
any
such
gap
issues.
as well, yeah, if you find out like there's any gap in the guide, so let us know. Yeah, let's move to the next slide. So this is the last slide for today, and it is the first slide for the security model. Though we have talked about a lot of about security, like what is the default level security provided by AWS, the least security model, how we can enhance the security using IAM and VPCs. We heard about some terms, though we'll discuss those in details in the coming session. So the very first thumb rule that AWS established is the AWS shared security model. So this is like it is a dual shared responsibility between the cloud provider and the customers both. So here you can see like in the diagram, in the bottom it says like the services which are under the orange boundary, it is the responsibility of AWS to manage the security of these aspects, which is like compute, storage, database, networking. AWS holds all the responsibility of securing these aspects. Like if you created any EC2 machine, if you created any snapshot, they will be available, they will be durable as per the guarantee they are claiming. And in case there is a data loss, AWS will be directly responsible and accountable for that. So which is like managing the security of the cloud infrastructure, which is hardware and all the services which AWS is providing. But on the other hand, customers are also responsible for managing the security of the resources that they are creating. Like if you created a EC2 machine, you created a key pair for it and you publish that key pair somewhere on the social networking site, and you are putting it somewhere on the public internet. So then it is your responsibility to keep the manage the security of those resources, because if someone get your key pair, they can log into your EC2 machine and they can corrupt the data, or they can hack the data there. So that is what it says, like if we are configuring the system, we need to give a judicial thing to it, so that we manage all the security of those components. In that case, the customers will be responsible. Something like we created a virtual machine, which is a very private virtual machine, but we expose it onto the public internet. We did not define the right security groups. We open the security group for all the access, like SSH, Telnet, HTTP, all the accesses. So we are opening those for the threat. So that is what customers need to make sure, like whatever application they are designing, they should think of a security of their aspect as well. Any question, any queries on this?
So two key things to remember, that security of the cloud is the responsibility of AWS or the vendor, while security in the cloud is the responsibility of customer. And you should see at least two questions around this concept in all the exams. There's a pin drop silence. What happened, guys? Is it like you didn't get at all about this concept, or like is it crystal clear? Kalyan, okay. Do you have any question? I see the raised hand. Okay, come on, guys, unmute yourself and let us know. Means
At
if you
least say no
understood this.
question.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's really difficult to assume.
Nothing from my
Yeah,
side.
I think the concept is quite heavy and curious, lots of curiosity. I can feel all the objects like on the blue and orange. There is a lot to go through. That's why I think no
Yeah,
words at the
means
moment.
just to give you some bit more insights, that you might get a question like that. Okay, means you created some EC2 instance, and this particular instance hard disk got corrupted. So it is whose responsibility to really fix that hard disk issue? It is like AWS responsibility, or it is like customer's responsibility?
AWS.
Right. So at that time, you will refer this shared security model, and you can expect a question like, you are an architect, for the ABC company and you are managing the IT division, and some of your customer reported the data loss of their personal details, and how will you identify who will be responsible for this data loss? So then there will be options like you will refer CloudWatch, you will refer CloudTrail, you will refer the AWS shared security model. So these type of options you will get in that question.
By the way, what should be the answer for this, guys? For data loss, who is responsible, AWS or customer?
Customer. It is a combined responsibility.
No. For data, it is always the customer's responsibility, because AWS is just giving you the hardware. They are just making sure that their hardware is secure enough. But exactly how you are configuring your data onto that or your applications onto that, it is the customer's responsibility. Okay, so Rajat, I think as you mentioned, this is the last slide for the day.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions? Or since we have some time available, so maybe I would really like to go back to Glue. Rajat,
Do we have the
can I do that?
Last question you asked, like data loss, it actually depends on a lot of factors, believe, because like if we have configured some database with high availability and again it is not available, then I believe it's AWS responsibility.
So when you have configured your database for high availability, let's say you have created your database in Northern Virginia region and you have configured it to multi-AZ configuration, that your data is means primarily you are storing in AZ1A, and then you are also replicating it into the AZ1B or maybe into 1C as well. Okay, so if anything is wrong with the Northern Virginia overall, so your system will be down. So there will not be any data loss because you will not be getting any request at all. So let's say there is some natural calamity in that area.
Yeah,
and
that's I'm saying, like if we have configured for high availability in like in multiple zones and multiple regions, and like we have taken care all of the best practices.
Sorry, you named two things here. Multiple zone is the concept of high availability, which works in the same region. Okay, so in Northern Virginia, I can configure my application and data in multiple AZs. So it is in the same region. Okay, so that is the high availability I'm configuring for my application. But when we talk about configuration in multi-region, so that is a DR scenario. So that is the disaster recovery which we are configuring on our application. So yes, definitely for very crucial production application, that is recommended that we should be having DR. But yes, everything comes with additional cost. So you need to understand the actual business use case of your application and what kind of RTOs and RPOs you are looking for. And accordingly, you should go for like multi-AZ should definitely be there, but you need to set up DR. If yes, what kind of DR? Because there are different strategies. There are 4 different strategies to configure your DR. That you want active configuration or you want active passive configuration. So you should be choosing basis that exactly what kind of RPOs and RTOs you have agreed with your business. Does that answer your question, or it like created more
That
confusion?
actually makes sense. But what I was saying, like if we have followed all of the, you can say, best practices for high availability, and then for, you can say, we have replication in different regions also, then I believe there is some SLA from AWS side also. So if that is not available, that is I want to say like that is AWS responsibility to maintain that SLA.
Yes, up to an extent. It's like joint responsibility. Let's say you have set up a DR scenario which is active passive, means you are making that provision that okay, if my recovery time objective is like for like last 4 hour or 3 hour, means you are configuring in that way that I'm okay if I lose that 3 hours data. So it is on the customer that exactly what kind of configuration they want. But yes, if you're configuring it for 3 hours, but you are not getting data for last 3 hours and you are not getting data for last 5 hours, let's say, then yes, you can claim AWS that I have configured it for 3 hours. Why I'm not able to see data for last 5 hours?
Yeah,
Does that
yeah,
make sense?
it's actually quite you can say dependent on your architecture and application and what kind of need you want. Yeah, there's no simple answer to that. Yes.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So while we are discussing, I was trying to go back to glue crawler so I can actually show these things in action. So I wanted to use the bucket which we created today, this one. But yes, meanwhile, please guys keep on asking any questions. And can anyone reiterate that what is the expectation? What kind of things you should be trying today, tomorrow, means before our next session? Definitely, you guys need to
I will
try
be.
and you need to do your homework. So there is no excuse for that. But exactly what all things you should be trying? Can anyone call out?
Yep. So, Rohit, this side, I
Yes,
would
right.
be typically creating a Windows EC2 machine because last time I created a Linux machine, so I wanted to probably see what is the difference, and then probably attach a volume on that the Windows machine. That is one part,
Okay.
and then probably do some exercise on creating buckets and probably publishing a website, as you said that we need to showcase how we can publish a website via, I mean, on S3.
And how we will get to know that you have completed that?
I will reach out on Meetup probably.
Meetup or like I have shared that LinkedIn post link. Maybe you can like paste your links there as a comments, or you can create your own post telling the word about your learnings that these are the things you have recently learned.
Okay.
Okay. And yes, on that LinkedIn post, we will also love to see some feedback that exactly what is going well, what do you want us to include further. And please don't say that we should be recording this session because that is intentionally not done.
Okay, another quick information I want to share, like we might need to change the details for the upcoming session, which is 17th and 19th, due to some urgent work in office. I will not be available on these days. So we will be posting the new date soon. So it's not going to be happening in October now because just after next week we have Diwali and Bhaiya Dooj festival on Monday and Wednesday. So we'll post the new date soon on the meetup itself. And apologies for dragging the dates further.
Maybe Rajat, if we can agree the dates with the audience itself.
Dipali, I need
Can we
some
still do
time
it
to.
in next week?
I'm sorry, say again.
Can we still do it in next week? I mean, I know you're not available on 17th or 19th, but probably on 20th or 21 if it's
So
possible.
actually, I need to travel due to some office work the whole next week. So the next week is not available at all. And then post next week we have Diwali and Bhai Dooj. So we only have 2 working days. So difficult to manage. So maybe in the week of 1st November to 5th November, we'll announce some dates.
What I did.
Okay.
Okay, so by the time we are exploring, Dipali is exploring the use case. So maybe a quick feedback if you think session is going well or the pace is fine, or any suggestion like if you want us to include something else or maybe share some less details on specific topics. So let us know. We'll make the changes in the next session. Or even if it is going good, then also say.
Yeah, so Rohit, this side, the session looks pretty much, insights in terms of probably an individual who does not know what is AWS. It is a very, very, very good session from my perspective. The only suggestion which I have is, we should typically take at least 2 breaks, and that is something which we should do. And I'm sorry, I've been asking this.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thanks for the great feedback, Rohit. We'll definitely see like if we can accommodate 2 breaks. Even I also feel we need it sometime, but due to the content we need to cover, so we'll stick to that flow as well.
You know, the breaks will break the momentum
breaks,
actually. So it's whenever like we break for 15 minutes, it's actually become a 25-minute sort of break because not everyone is available at the right time. So, but yeah, I think point taken, Rohit. We can definitely plan that.
Yeah, apart from breaks, I just want to highlight that Dipali, you and Rajat, you have been really very nice in terms of explaining each and everything as of now, and I expect the same in next 2 sessions as well. Both the sessions were really, really good from my perspective.
Okay, great. We'll try to maintain to be nice.
I'll echo Rohit's feedback, Dipali and Rajat. Just one point. I know the whole session cannot be recorded, but is there any way? Or if it is already done, just the lab part, if it's already available somewhere, or any YouTube videos. Because we'll tend to forget because you're doing so many actions. I'm sure, at least I'll not be able to remember everything that we did. So is it any way possible that at least you record the lab part that we do and post it on YouTube or something?
So Harmeek, we have few recorded sessions within NetWest. I can share you link with that.
Okay.
But I think again for these sessions are open sessions, so we cannot record that because of the Zoom limitations. But the earlier recorded sessions I can share with the NetWest employees only because those are internal to NetWest. They're accessible only within NetWest, not outside.
And they have the same content.
Yes. It's the same use cases that we're taking.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that'll be helpful, Rajat. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, in terms of the request of recording, if we cannot record, I understand. Is there one probably one PPT which you can typically create and typically tell us that you need to practice these things before your next class? If that can be done, it would really make sense, so that we also know that what all things we need to practice, and we can probably ask more questions in our next discussion. Probably seeing that let's say there were four activities which I had to perform, and I was not able to perform, let's say, 1 activity or 2 activities out of 4.
Okay, Rohit, though we wanted like audience to be like really active and smart enough to really capture that, but point taken. We will update the same thing on this Medium blog, not Medium blog, come on, this meetup. Okay, so in Meetup, in comments, we will update that exactly. These are the things we are expecting you to complete before next session.
Yeah, I've actually taken notes. I'm pretty much fine from that perspective, but I thought of giving an update that if there is one slide, probably at the end of the session, which typically states that these are 6 activities which you need to perform before you come to next class. That would that would really make sense for all of us. On behalf of all of us is something which I'm talking about.
Sure. Point taken. So we will add an extra slide in the end, and we will detailed out that exactly what all things you should be completing, and then we will share the slide link on the meetup. That makes sense?
Thank you so much.
No problem. So meanwhile, yes, as you see, like I was trying to create this crawler. So this time we can see this is stopping, but we can see the status here. It has created 4 tables. The reason it has created 4 tables because we had 4 different files in our bucket. So now let's see these things in the table section. So here in tables, we should be able to see all those names. But yes, this is the one which I'm interested to query because this contains the proper CSV data. So if I simply open this table and here like in the schema, I can also edit the schema. I can see, okay, what all columns are there. If I want to change the data type or column name for any of these tables, we have liberty to do that, okay? So this is how you can fix the schema if needed, or you can add or remove few columns from your data file. Now, once we have created this table, I'm just quickly trying to go to Athena so we can query this data. So Athena, as now we understand, it is a service to query data which is available in S3. So here, what was the data source? In our case, we created a database. Okay, sorry. Here, this is the database, demo SADB. And then it is listing all the tables created under this database. So if I try to preview this particular table, so here it has generated this query by its own. Let's select star from this table and it is displaying first 10 records. But interestingly, there is no data. Means I have not picked the right file where I had proper CSV data. I'm sorry about that again, because I did not check that exactly what data we are having. But yeah, another way to query S3 files is this also, that if we pick any files here and go to action, we can do an expedited query with S3 select. So in our case, this is containing the CSV file. So we simply select the CSV option. So it will display top 5 rows. So if we have any proper data, like we can see it here. But yeah, something is wrong with this data format. That's how I'm not able to see it in Athena. Again, I think bad choice of bucket first and then bad choice of data. But yes, I think it should have give you enough insights that exactly how these services work. So you can definitely try out something. Take some proper CSV file and try to query that. So with that note, I think we would like to stop here. And as you mentioned, we will create one additional slide, list out all the things which we expect you to complete. So please spare some time. And as Rajat highlighted, next session means as per original plan, it was on 17th, but now we need to delay it by a few days. So I think earliest possible date, which I can see possibly early November. So stay tuned, like we will share that update on the meetup. But it is the opportunity for you guys to explore more until that time, on especially on the services which we have covered so far. Try out some practice questions as well. So for practice questions, if you simply Google that Solution Architect Associate practice exam, that you should be able to see some dumps and just try out those and keep building on your knowledge.
So also keep a watch on our Medium Spaces Explore, that there are lots of guides we have uploaded there, which are the self-paced guide, like you don't need any session before trying those slides, because it start with the background about the use case, the things that we're trying to solve, and then the steps. So it's the same lab exercises which are showing here in our training. So you can refer and study on those links as well.
Yeah, I have shared my screen again, and definitely I would like to recommend you guys to go for the auto scaling exercise. So here there is one guide, one lab steps to configure auto scaling. So please try to follow that. So configure auto scaling with load balancer. So you guys have already created load balancer. You know how it works, how it to be done. Now just add another flavor in there, that configure auto scaling. So try this out and let's talk about any challenges over the meetup or on the LinkedIn or in the next session. Though it should be simple to follow. So here, like these are the high level steps that first of all, we will be creating load balancer. Then we need to create launch configuration. So launch configuration is nothing but the same template when we create EC2 instance. So we fill some details like that, exactly what image we want, which key pair we want, how many instances, if we need to provide any user data. So that is the launch configuration. Then we need to create auto scaling group, that minimum how many instances I want and maximum how many instances. So let's say I'm saying minimum 2 and maximum 6. So that kind of launch auto scaling group you need to define. And then once we have done this configuration, we can test auto scaling. So here in this guide, we have taken a scenario that let's say if your CPU is getting utilized, like more than 70% it is utilized, then add 2 more instances. So when load is on one CPU is more than 70%, then it means you're getting more requests and now you might need additional servers. So that is the time you add 2 more servers so that you can handle a load in effective way. So that's how with this testing step, you can generate some load. I'm using a stress utility here to generate some load. So generate some load. The moment your CPU usage reaches beyond the defined limit, it will you will see that it has added more machines to your application. So it is something really good to practice. So it will help you clear a lot of concepts. Okay, I think enough, Gyan. Fine. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your patience. But yes, keep trying, keep exploring various things. So you are like building it further. You are not forgetting these things.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So we're winding up the session for today.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.